Chapter 2038. Damn it, my hand. Washa Matsushi cried bitterly, rolling like a madman. He was in great pain. In terms of the resilience of ghouls, especially powerful SSS ghouls like Washa Matsushi, being cut off an arm will not affect their fighting power at all. Because if necessary, they can have another one. This kind of small thing is just a piece of cake. Hey, how do you feel? It's amazing, isn't it? Director Washa Matsushi, why don't you grow another arm? The recovery ability of ghouls is very strong. Let me see your regeneration ability. Dustless stared at Washa Matsushi with a deep face. His meaningful tone obviously had something to say. What does Dustless mean? Takatsuki-sen and the store manager Yoshimura Gakusen looked at Dustless with confusion, staring at the ferocious cheeks, and looking at the pain on Washa Matsushi's face. They suddenly understood that this thing was more complicated than they thought. What did he do? Takatsuki-sen and Yoshimura Gakusen were confused, and then looked at Washa Matsushi strangely. This guy waited for a long time, but he did not grow a new arm. Instead, because of the pain in a certain position, his cheeks were distorted and cold. Combined with the terrible eyes of ghouls, Washa Matsushi was like a ghost. What the hell is that? Fire? After all, they were not ordinary people. Staring at the place where Washa Matsushi's arm was cut off for a long time, the father and daughter understood why Washa Matsushi was so painful. Looking carefully, the place where the arm was directly cut off by Dustless was burning with a small flame. Black flame? Yoshimura Gakusen was shocked. The black flame was like a willow branch, floating with the wind, and may be extinguished at any time. But what was intriguing was that even if Washa Matsushi used his Kagun to beat the black flame, he could not blow it out. Instead, his Kagun would also be affected and burned with the black flame. This is Washa Matsuri. Dustless actually used such a cruel trick on him. Takatsuki-san suddenly understood. She had been Dustless's follower for a while. She knew that this was a trick called Amaterasu, and it could not be extinguished. If an ordinary person touched it, they would be affected. Damn it, this damned bastard. Washa Matsushi cursed Wu Chen in his heart. He wanted to skin this guy alive. He glared at Wu Chen with hatred. Blood was already flowing out of his eyes. Washa Matsushi knew that Wu Chen was torturing him on purpose. He wanted to be burned slowly by the Tensho. His life was worse than death. Wu Chen's actions were probably revenge for what happened just now. TSK, you're already at this stage, yet you still have such a murderous expression? Dustless looked at the crazy Washa Matsuri, feeling bored. He gradually lost interest in this guy. It's about time to send you on your way. Don't miss me in heaven. Don't even think about it. Hearing this, Washa Matsushi's eyes regained the light of survival. If there was still a thought supporting Washa Matsushi to accept the slow burning of Amaterasu, then it was to live. It was better to live than to die. Such a simple truth was known by the world. I can't give up. Looking at the burning flame on his body, Washa Matsushi gritted his teeth. Like a storm cutting through the sky, he disappeared in an instant. The speed is really fast. I can only see a blurry afterimage. Looking up at the gradually disappearing Washa Matsushi, Dustless lazily raised his right foot and said, "But, how fast is your speed? Can you be faster than light?" Light speed kick. The light with the majestic destructive power, like a long tail, automatically followed Washa Matsushi, and approached Washa Matsushi in an instant. Damn it. Feeling the dangerous fluctuation behind him, Washa Matsushi turned his head and looked. The dazzling golden light swallowed his whole body. Boom boom boom. A deafening explosion suddenly rang out, and a mushroom cloud of boiling flames swept across the void. The blazing high temperature caused white steam to rise from the sky. As for Washa Matsushi, he didn't even feel anything. He was evaporated by a kick. It was because he was too weak, so he was slaughtered on the spot without resistance. He didn't even feel the pain when he was kicked by Dustless. Mustard, the object of the transaction for many years, was slaughtered. Yoshimura Gakusen was somewhat sad, the whole face drooped, it seemed that he was remembering the death of Washa Matsushi. Store manager, I suddenly feel the air is disgusting, do you know why? Looking at Yoshimura Gakusen with a teasing face, Dustless's eyes narrowed into a crescent moon. It's because of your disgusting kindness. Ghouls were originally the incarnation of evil. The store manager Yoshimura Gakusen himself said that when ghouls were born, it meant that the beginning of evil had been pulled up, and if they wanted to live, they must eat humans. Therefore, every surviving perennial ghoul had human blood and fed on human flesh, especially the SSS class store manager was one of the best. Izumi, his sight fell on Takatsuki-sen, who had a cold temperament. Dustless smiled very evilly, and said with a deep tone that was more terrible than the devil, "Kill him now, Izumi, remember not to let me down." Leaving such a sentence, Wu Chen left lazily. His twinkling eyes were brimming with brilliance, as if he was premeditated and planning a big event. As for whether Takatsuki-san would kill Yoshimura Gakusen, Dustless did not have to worry about it. Izumi hated Yoshimura Gakusen very much, especially when she saw him live so freely. She was full of hatred for the store manager. Chapter 2039. Ait, do you really want to kill me? Don't listen to this guy's slanderous words. Is he a villain, conspiring to instigate the relationship between us father and daughter? The store manager Yoshimura Kozen's face was embarrassed. Seeing Takatsuki-sen's murderous intent, he felt very uncomfortable. Old man, pay attention to your tone. Dustless frowned and looked at Yoshimura Kozen with displeasure, and seriously emphasized, make it clear to me, this is the last reminder, I did not instigate the relationship between you father and daughter. What Takatsuki-sen did was her own initiative. Yes, the private affairs between us have nothing to do with others. Takatsuki-sen's emerald eyes were shining, staring at the store manager Yoshimura Kozen. Her fists were clenched. She seemed to remember the miserable life in the past. The whole person's cheeks were covered with a layer of darkness like the night sky. The resentment between the father and daughter is really big. Dustless saw this and secretly smacked his tongue. The private affairs between other people's father and daughter, he was not good to intervene and meddle in other people's business. The overall reason was because of the ruthless abandonment of the store manager Yoshimura Kozen, which caused Takatsuki-sen to suffer a lot in her childhood. Later, Takatsuki-sen, who grew up in suffering, found that the store manager lived in happiness. Under the contrast, there was hatred. Why did Takatsuki-sen sell the store manager's information to CCG? The fundamental reason was that she hated the store manager. Sen, quickly clean up this old man, and then come to me. After a while, Dustless casually said a greeting, and suddenly left with his hands in his pockets. Where are you going? Don't you plan to continue to destroy CCG? Dustless suddenly planned to retreat. Both Takatsuki-sen and the store manager Yoshimura Kozen did not expect it, and their eyes stared straight at the back of Dustless. The things that should be destroyed have been destroyed. Right, Sen, remember to spread the things about Washim Matsushi. We must let everyone in Tokyo understand that the director of CCG, Washim Matsushi, he is a ghoul. Wuchen paused and instructed Yishiwen. Then, he began to move again. But Lord Dustless, at the same time, other members of Aojirai Tree caught up, and some of them said unwillingly, CCG is about to be defeated by us, is it really okay to let them go? The person who spoke was Jason, who had been beaten up by Dustless previously. At this moment, he had obediently become Dustless's lackey. Idiot. Unexpectedly, Dustless just snorted and said disdainfully, annihilate CCG? Who told you this? Just because of the death of a director, some small fries, and a special investigator, you think we defeated CCG? Stop this kind of ridiculous talk in the future. CCG, no, it should be said that the power of V organization is bigger than you think. What we have destroyed now is only the tip of the iceberg. After all, the director of CCG and Shuji Matsuri were just a clown. For example, Arima Kisho of V organization, and powerful characters such as Odo and Erfuku had not appeared yet. In addition, there was a special organization, Clown, such as the people in it and other ghouls were still hidden in the dark and had never appeared. Staring at Dustless's back, Takatsuki-sen did not understand what he wanted to do. Where are you going now? And our previous plan, isn't it to annihilate CCG? Since we have only cleared a part of their power, it means that if we want to completely annihilate CCG's white dove, we must. Do we have to kill all humans? Without giving Takatsuki-san the opportunity to continue speaking, Dustless directly interrupted her, and couldn't help but sigh. Sen, haven't you figured it out yet? The direction of this war, no matter what the final result is, ghouls will lose. Impossible. Hearing this, Takatsuki-san shook her head resolutely and said, annihilate all CCG. If the world is ruled by ghouls, it will be our great victory. Ridiculous. However, before Dustless taught Takatsuki-san a lesson, the store manager Yoshimura Gyozen said seriously, 8. Such a fantasy plan is impossible, you must, phew. Takatsuki-san was obviously not interested in listening to the store manager's nonsense, and her huge white arm went straight to him. Boom. It happened suddenly, the store manager Yoshimura Gyozen did not expect it, and he did not defend in time. The moment the huge palm hit him, the store manager's body trembled fiercely, and he was directly slapped and flew out. Although the store manager Yoshimura Gyozen was SSS class ghouls, and they were all one-eyed owls, Takatsuki-sen's strength was obviously more than the store manager who was also SSS class. In the original story, the store manager Yoshimura Gyozen was besieged by several special ghouls investigators, and it ended in a fiasco. Even if Takatsuki-sen didn't save the scene in time, he might have been made into kunk. My meaning is very simple. Taking a deep breath, Dustless said bluntly, even if I help ghouls to destroy all human beings, ghouls will eventually be doomed to become losers. This is also right, what are you going to do? Takatsuki-sen was silent for a while and then nodded. If human beings are extinct, what can ghouls use to satisfy their hunger? The final result may only be starvation in vain. In fact, the way is very simple. He bowed his head and pondered for a while, and suddenly remembered the transformed one-eyed ghoul, Kaneki Ken, in his mind. Dustless explained, if all the ghouls are transformed into human beings, this problem will be solved. The key to the problem of ghouls must be a crucial person, Jana, my hero. This person can transform Kaneki Ken into a ghoul, and may have the hope to transform ghouls into humans. Chapter 2040. As for the harmony mentioned by the store manager Yoshimura Kozen, it was completely a dream. Ghouls needed the delicious food of human flesh to survive. Just like water and fire, these two completely opposite attributes could never coexist. Transform ghouls into humans? Takatsuki-sen's eyes were bright when she heard the words. The relationship between humans and ghouls must have no flaws, but then she thought of the harsh conditions and smiled bitterly. It's easy to say, but it's not easy to do. If it can be done, maybe the ghouls in this world have already disappeared, and no one is willing to live under others' supercilious eyes. Just like Kaneki Ken, if he can continue to be a human, will he choose to become a ghoul? Is there any other way? Takatsuki-sen looked at Dustless with expectation, pursed her lips, and her eyes were full of desire. In her cognition, Dustless belonged to the omnipotent type. Of course, there is. Dustless smiled strangely, and immediately said gloomily, for example, if I destroy all the creatures on this planet, from then on, the world will return to peace, and there will be no disputes. Right, by the way, I am best at how to destroy a planet. This could be considered as an extreme form of harmony. If everyone was dead, would there still be chaos? Hearing the words, Takatsuki-sen's spirit was refreshed, and her eyes stared at Dustless. Although the arc of the mouth slightly raised looked like a boring joke, Takatsuki-sen felt an inexplicable huge pressure. It seemed that the man in front of her often did such cruel things as destruction, which made Takatsuki-sen's heart inevitably covered with a layer of dark clouds. Did you see 8, this guy is a crazy person. After clearing his throat, the store manager Yoshimura Kozen said, Dustless is definitely not a good guy, 8, don't make a mistake. Humph. Takatsuki-sen sneered after hearing the words, and immediately sneered with hatred, is it? Then he is countless times better than some scumbags who abandoned their children. Hee hee. Upon seeing this, Dustless could only laugh dryly before leaving decisively. Hurry up and get rid of this old man. Quan, he's too much of an eyesore. What kind of species is this kid? Is there such a powerful existence? It can even emit light. In the laboratory of Garner Ming Bo, through the monitoring screen, Dustless crushed the SSS-class ghouls and destroyed everything. No one could defeat him, he was a godlike existence. Let's ask, can humans emit light? Obviously not. This kind of thing was far beyond the normal laws of physics. No one in the world could do it. Tokyo isn't safe anymore, we have to change locations. That damned Dustless. Jana, my hero, couldn't help but curse again and again. Because of Dustless, the entire Tokyo was now in an unprecedented chaos, becoming a hell for humans and a heaven for ghouls. The so-called CCG, in front of Dustless, was completely as fragile as an ant. It was even not polite to say that Dustless just moved a little and easily killed CCG. He did not need the help of other ghouls, it was just a simple foil. In addition, the rest of the ghouls had no other special highlights. The ghoul called Kamishiro Rise must also be taken away. She is my important experimental subject. Thinking of the importance of Kamishiro Rise, Garner Ming Bo walked to the depths of the laboratory. It was a bottomless corridor, gloomy, the focus of the road seemed to lead to hell, and the miserable screams could be heard. The depths of the corridor led to the abandoned warehouse, and the heavy iron door was locked tightly by a giant lock. This was the place where Kamishiro Rise was imprisoned. Go away, damned ghoul. Through the gap between the iron door, the panicked screams came from the warehouse. Kamishiro Rise was a genuine ghoul. If they wanted to keep her in captivity, they naturally needed something like human flesh. This guy's nickname, Gluttony, is really not for nothing. Outside the iron door, hearing the screams, Garner Ming Bo sighed. In order to use Kamishiro Rise to live, he naturally had to prepare the necessary human flesh. Take this guy away as soon as possible. With a decision in his heart, Garner Ming Bo took out the key in his clothes. When he was about to open the lock, a gust of cold wind suddenly came in the dark corridor. Whoosh! The piercing cold wind lingered, as if it came from the depths of hell, making people shudder, but perhaps because of a long habit, Garner Ming Bo had been used to it. Is it Odo? Without turning his head, Garner Ming Bo just complained. That damned Dustless is too powerful. We must temporarily transfer the laboratory location, otherwise, we will be eradicated like the group of CCG. Odo Urfu was Garner Ming Bo's assistant, and he was also the mastermind of the last plot against Kamishiro Rise. Are you so afraid of me? By the way, where is Odo Urfu? If you're so afraid of me, you probably won't listen to me, right? Why don't I just kill you? What do you think, Dr. Garner? A discordant tone suddenly resounded from behind him, lazily carrying undisguised ridicule. If you're so afraid of me, you probably won't listen to me, right? The scarlet Sharingan jumped with cold light, and Garner Ming Bo felt a chill down his spine. It's you? Turning his head to take a look, what entered his eyes was the calm and collected Dustless. Jana Mingbo's old face twitched fiercely, and he screamed out loud in a daze, "It's you, Dustless?" Chapter 2041. After discovering that Dustless had appeared, Jana Mingbo suddenly felt that he had become the prey of the Grim Reaper. Gulu. In the face of death, any creature only had one simple emotion, fear, especially Jana Mingbo. He still had so many experiments to complete, and now he was going to die. How could he be willing to accept his fate? His heart was naturally full of panic. Once this person panicked, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. The current Jana Mingbo was like this. There is no need to be so nervous, I am not a ghoul, I will not eat you. Dustless patted Jana Mingbo's shoulder, with dimples on his cheeks. He looked very amiable, but in the eyes of Jana Mingbo, he was like a smiling tiger. He did not know when he would give you a big bite. Your Excellency. What are you looking for me for? Dustless's mouth said lightly, but Jana Mingbo did not dare to believe it. Some people who were stronger sometimes turned their backs on others. Of course, I am looking for you to work. Dustless looked at Jana Mingbo seriously and came truthfully. Work? Jana Mingbo's tone had a hint of obvious bullying, and he looked quite surprised. Hey, do you feel surprised? Dustless smiled and looked at the shocked Jana Mingbo, and said to himself, this is normal, you may think that your family's ancestral grave is smoking. Huh? Jana Mingbo was confused by this inexplicable words, and immediately bowed his head to ponder, and finally understood what Dustless meant. Our family's ancestral grave is smoking? It should be emitting black smoke, right? Otherwise, how could a fiend like you find me? Jana Mingbo complained in his heart, but his mouth was full of flattery. He did not have the capital to fight against Dustless. People under the eaves, sometimes bowing down was necessary. I heard that you transformed Kaneki Ken into a ghoul, right? Dustless glanced at the bloody iron door, and then heard the sick voice, and then through the narrow gap in the iron door, he already knew who was locked in it. It is indeed successful, although the probability is so small that it is negligible, but as you can see, Kaneki Ken is a successful test product. Jana Mingbo directly admitted, he did not dare to hide anything, after all, his life was still in the hands of Dustless. Kaneki Ken is just a success. Glancing at Jana Mingbo, Dustless understood that he had an experimental assistant, called Urfu, who once crushed Takatsuki. So the successful product you said is Urfu? Speaking of which, where did old duo and Urfu go? I remember that his identity is very complicated. Looking around, Wuchen didn't find any trace of old duo Urfu. That kid? Hearing that Dustless called Urfu as that kid, Jana Mingbo was speechless. Odo Urfu was also a ghoul, and he was also one-eyed. His strength was strong enough to easily defeat the SSS-class ghouls. This person was transformed by Jana my hero, and his strength was also extremely terrifying. In the future, he will crush Takatsuki-sen without any effort. I am talking about Urfu. I remember that the kid's identity is messy, and he seems to have a relationship with every large organization. For example, Urfu was a member of the Clown organization, and at the same time, he kept a secret contact with Bronze 4. Not only that, Urfu was a first-class ghoul investigator, and he was also a member of the V organization. His identity was complicated and unprecedented. I don't know where Urfu went. Hearing this, Jana Mingbo just sighed. If Urfu was here, he could protect him. The person who was caught must be Dustless. Well, that kid ran fast. Wuchen could only sigh sorrowfully at this elusive old duo Urfu. It was as if he was blaming God for not letting him meet old duo Urfu. Right, are you willing to work for me? With enough patience, Dustless sat calmly and said slowly, of course, you can refuse. Hearing this, Jana Mingbo smiled embarrassedly on the surface and said respectfully, it's my fortune to be chosen by Lord Wuchen. You just said that there's smoke rising from my ancestral grave. Why would I refuse? His mouth picked up some nice words, but in his heart, Jana Mingbo was cursing Dustless for being shameless. He scolded him until he was completely covered in wounds. It sounded nice, but did he have the capital to refuse? Jana Mingbo was sure that once he said the word no, he would be broken into pieces by Dustless, or he would simply take some tough measures to threaten him. Open the door lock. Hearing Jana Mingbo's answer, Dustless had a satisfied smile on his face. Then, he pointed to the abandoned heavy iron door. The one locked inside should be Kamashiro Rise, right? Let's use her as a test subject. I think it's just right. My lord is right. Jana Mingbo just continued to flatter him, but in his heart, he was vomiting blood helplessly. Urfu was not here, and he did not belong to the kind of combat personnel. Compromising Dustless was necessary, unless Jana Mingbo wanted to die. Creak. After about 10 seconds, Jana Mingbo finally used the key to open the iron chain. After falling to the ground, there was a muffled explosion. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The moment the iron door was opened, the purple-haired girl pounced over like a hurricane. Her thick red cocoon swayed, and a sick and crazy smile hung on her delicate face. Who else could it be other than Kamishiro Rise? Chapter 2042. TSK, we've just met, and you want to die? Your temper is as impatient as before. Seeing the incoming shadow, although it was as fast as lightning in Jana Mingbo's eyes, it was as slow as a tortoise when it came to Dustless. No matter how fast any creature is, can it be faster than light? Therefore, to Dustless, the speed of any species is negligible compared to him, and the speed that he is proud of cannot withstand a single blow. Retreat. Thinking of the danger of Kamishiro Rise, Jana Mingbo turned around and ran. The reason why he dared to approach her in the past was because there was the restriction of the heaven-defying existence, Jana Mingbo. No matter how powerful Kamishiro Rise was, she did not dare to act rashly. However, even though the current Dustless was very strong, who knew whether or not he would protect Jana Mingbo? You don't know when to retreat. Glancing at the scarlet evil eye, Dustless's body erupted with violent power fluctuations. Ka ka ka. The ground burst open with a bang, and the messy cracks were like weeds that grew randomly. They were everywhere, and the air in the abandoned warehouse was oppressive. Boom boom boom. After a few seconds of silence, the entire warehouse began to shake. What's going on? Is there an earthquake? Seeing that the Kagun was about to pierce through Jana Mingbo, Kamishiro Rise's body actually crawled down, and the Kagun that was shot out had to stop. I haven't seen you for a while, but your wild nature still hasn't changed. You're still as violent as before, Kenzaki-san. A lazy voice came, and Kamishiro Rise subconsciously raised her eyes and glanced over. It was the most disgusting and most fearful handsome face, looking at Dustless in fear. On this mysterious man, she once again felt the insignificance of being an ant. Why are you here? Staring at Dustless, Kamishiro Rise said in annoyance, isn't this the territory of Jana Mingbo and Jana Mingbo? Why would an outsider appear here? The times will change, and the owner of this place will naturally change. Kenzaki-san's thoughts are too stubborn. Dustless said slowly. Could it be? Hearing this, Kamishiro Rise's expression suddenly changed. Looking at Jana Mingbo, he suddenly understood something. Jana Mingbo submitted to you? This has nothing to do with me. Kamishiro Rise said coldly. She knew that the monstrous aura just now came from Dustless, but she knew Dustless's nature. No matter what, she couldn't compromise. This is a matter of principle. Jana Mingbo is Dustless's lackey, but she can't. TSK, rebellious girls are always so flamboyant. Dustless just smiled indifferently and immediately said without any trace of politeness, you're just Jana Mingbo's test subject. His things are my things, and you are no exception. Right now, Kamishiro Rise is just an item of mine, Dustless announced solemnly, completely ignoring Kamishiro Rise's feelings. In your dreams. Anger appeared on her face as Kamishiro Rise loudly resisted. Boom. Unexpectedly, as soon as these words just fell, Dustless kicked Kamishiro Rise without hesitation. Kakaka. Kamishiro Rise flew back 20 or 30 meters away, her body smashed on the thick wall, and a deep crack was clearly visible. It was enough to show how heavy Dustless's kick was. This ruthless man. Kamishiro Rise fell to the ground, and there was clearly visible blood foam at the corner of her mouth. Her internal organs were still trembling. She could even be sure that if this kick kicked the S-class ghoul, maybe the ghoul would have died. You are not qualified to resist. Suddenly there was a bright light in front of her eyes. Kamishiro Rise looked at him with her cold eyes without any emotion. She was looking at herself with a look of disdain. Go with me obediently, don't force me to do it again. Dustless said indifferently. You, Kamishiro Rise glared at him, but the squirming mouth finally stopped. First, she became Jana my hero's white mouse, and now she was stared at by the moody big bad wolf. Why was her fate so miserable? Also, put on your clothes for me, I don't want to be suspected by others of having a special hobby. Looking at the exposed skin on Kamishiro Rise's chest, Dustless threw his coat to her. Because of the kick just now, Kamishiro Rise's clothes were cracked. Special hobby? Kamishiro Rise's mouth twitched. Dustless's words showed that she had a problem, especially Dustless. This guy simply threw his clothes on her face, which was really shameful. But this guy tastes really good. No wonder it will make me hungry, and I can't help but want to eat Dustless. Kamishiro Rise instinctively sniffed the smell on Dustless's clothes, and her face showed a touch of intoxication. The faint fragrance was very elegant and very simple, especially the nose of ghouls was different from ordinary people. This kind of smell was enough for ghouls. It's not good if the smell is too strong. Looking at Dustless greedily, Kamishiro Rise muttered to herself, full of endless desire and expectation. In the past, she coveted Dustless's smell and secretly followed Dustless, but sadly, in the end, it was Kamishiro Rise who was crushed, and she was also schemed by Jana my hero and Jana my hero. The smell is too strong? Dustless was stunned, then turned his head and saw Kamishiro Rise holding his clothes. Her pretty face was full of infatuation, and a rare cold expression appeared. Idiot, the smell you said is too strong is called body odor. Chapter 2043. Dustless was suddenly speechless. Everyone knew that ghouls liked human flesh, but it really made people dumbfounded that she was crazy to this point. She did not even seem to be afraid of death. Miss Kanzaki, don't kill my patients. Wuchen impatiently glanced at Kamishiro Rise. His face was filled with displeasure. Seeing her fiery gaze, he couldn't help but feel annoyed and disgusted. He secretly swore in his heart, I'll treat you as a lab rat. You're really a good experimental subject. After all, the particularity of Kanzaki Rise was well known. Fuku and Kaneki Ken transplanted her organs, so both of them were different. Needless to say, Fuku's strength was enough to easily crush the SSS-class ghouls. Although Kaneki Ken was more useless now, in the future, he will be an SSS-class ghoul, and he will become the new One-Eyed King. You'd better put away your eyes, I can kill you at any time, just like this. Dustless picked up the stone and crushed it into powder. He warned in a cold voice, at your level, if you have to add a time limit to defeat me, it must be 1,000 years later. With Kanzaki Rise's current level, she may be able to defeat Dustless after practicing for 1,000 years. Of course, the main reason was whether she could live for such a long time. This bastard, seeing Wu Chen's cold eyes, Kaneshiro Rise felt defeated and cursed inwardly, this man has a heart of stone. Could it be that he's made of iron? He doesn't know how to be gentle with women. Stupid. In a trance, it seemed that he had seen through Kanzaki Rise's thoughts. Dustless suddenly sneered, you are so vulgar. Don't think too highly of yourself, you are just a ghoul. Keeping a ghoul who liked to eat human flesh by his side, only an idiot would do this, so Kanzaki Rise was still suitable to be a white mouse for Jana Mingbo. You bastard. When she heard the words, Kanzaki Rise's pretty face turned green and white, killing intent burst out, and the gem-like exquisite beautiful eyes burned with anger. Are you looking down on me? Hey! I just looked down on you, so what? Haven't you figured out your identity? Do you need me to remind you? Dustless snorted coldly, then lifted her foot again. You want me to respect you, right? That's not a problem, but that depends on how many kicks you can take. I don't mind telling you, if it weren't for the fact that you're a test subject, that kick would have killed you. This was not Dustless bragging. If he had the intention to kill Kamishiro Rise, she would have been turned into a pile of meat paste. Buzz buzz buzz, not long after Dustless's voice fell, his right foot was covered in a huge light, surrounded by a destructive sharpness. This bastard, Kamishiro Rise's face fell, and her confidence plummeted. There was nothing she could do about it, the difference in strength between the two of them made her powerless in certain aspects. Even if she wanted to fight against Dustless, she did not have the extra strength to do so. Retreat. Dustless glanced at Kamishiro Reese expressionlessly before he left. Time flew by, and half a day passed quietly in a blink of an eye. Although it was only a few hours, the significance was particularly great. The situation of the entire Tokyo was rewritten, and the huge city became a paradise for ghouls and a hell for humans. On the streets and roads, there were all human corpses, and they were gnawed. Of course, the death and injury of ghouls were also great. After all, some CCG's ability was quite strong. All in all, the entire Tokyo was now a bloody river, and it became a hell on earth. Even because the sun was too hot, the corpses thrown in the sun already had a strange smell, and the smell was disgusting. As for CCG, the end was even more miserable. The entire CCG was almost completely defeated. Except for some lucky ghouls, all the people who encountered Dustless were almost destroyed. It was worth mentioning that CCG was also finished. Because of Dustless's interference, the director of CCG and Shimatsuri were ghouls. It spread to the entire Tokyo in an instant like a storm. Let's ask, if the director was a ghoul, what credibility does such a CCG have? Therefore, CCG also became the target of people's shouts, and all of them became the target of everyone's hatred. All in all, today's Tokyo was in a state of no master. CCG was not in charge, and ghouls did not rule humans. It fell into a very strange state. Most of the CCG members were complaining about this, and they hated Shimatsuri in their hearts. Of course, the members of the council were also the targets of hostility. Some people even suspected that the Shu family was secretly disguised by ghouls, which also led to the outbreak of civil strife in Tokyo. After all, the Shu family had a lot of connections in the political circle and controlled a lot of armed forces. For example, the V organization was one of them. The sudden offensive of the Aojirai tree crushed the balance that was maintained, and the members of the Shimatsuri family became the target of everyone's shouts, and they were seriously destroyed. Even some government personnel were extremely surprised to find that although there were many human beings among the members of CCG, there were also ghouls. This was not wrong about CCG. For example, Arima Kisho was a half-human ghoul, and half-human blood flowed in his body. The same was true for Otoku, but he was the same as Kaneki Ken, he was a transformed one-eyed ghoul. Chapter 2044. Life was like this. When there were no mistakes, everyone treated each other with respect, but when it came to the edge of life and death, they immediately exposed their ugly nature and began to blame CCG. For example, other members of CCG, although there were some ghouls, there were some humans who had made achievements. At this moment, they were treated as ghouls by the angry humans and became the rats that everyone wanted to beat. They all left Tokyo. On the top of the deserted high-rise, Dustless looked at the deserted city below and could not help but shake his head. Since the crisis of CCG members being ghouls broke out, the huge and prosperous Tokyo became an empty city in an instant. Most of the humans had fled, and the slow humans even wished that they could grow a pair of wings. So what about you? Do you want to stay here and kill me? Suddenly looking back, Dustless stared at the strong figure behind him and said with interest, "You are called Mato Akira, right? Are you here to seek revenge?" Looking up, the young girl with blonde hair and blue eyes was as tall as a stone pillar, motionless, and her delicate and cold cheeks were full of unquestionable determination. "I am not here to seek revenge." Mato Akira stared at Dustless with deep eyes, then gritted her teeth and said, "I am here to draw power from you. I must make those bastards pay with their blood." "Those bastards?" Hearing this, Wuchen raised his eyebrows slightly. He immediately glanced at Polo's Tokyo and couldn't help muttering in his heart, "The so-called group of bastards, don't tell me they are the Aojirai tree?" Because of the Aojirai trees, this led to hell on earth, a heaven for ghouls. To be honest, I want to retaliate against those despicable guys of CCG. Mato Akira's words were shocking, her eyes were full of hatred, and she said with disgust, "Those despicable villains turned out to be ghouls. My father and I have been loyal to them for so many years, it turned out to be like this." Dustless suddenly understood the mentality of Mato Akira. Mato Akira respected her father very much, Mato Wusu. Mato Wusu hated ghouls very much, and he would kill them if he saw them. However, the funny thing was that CCG, which Mato Wusu was loyal to, turned out to be the biggest thief's nest. Wasn't this the biggest irony? But challenging them in your current state is the same as courting death. Dustless stared at Mato Weiwei with deep meaning, and instigated her, don't even think about killing CCG's people in your life. To be honest, Arima Kisho and Odafuku are the strongest people above the SSS level, especially that Odafuku is the most unreliable. What can you, a superior investigator, do? The strength of the superior investigator was good, but it was still a dream to defeat the strong person who surpassed the SSS ghoul. That's why I came to find you. Looking straight into Dustless's eyes, Mato Wei analyzed wisely, you should have noticed that I was following you a long time ago. The reason you didn't kill me is because I'm useful to you, right? TSK, you are a sensitive woman, Dustless nodded, and immediately stared at Mato Wei with an evil smile. You have to understand that you are making a deal with a demon who kills people like flies. Are you sure you want to do this? I have no choice. Shaking her head, Mato Wei's face was filled with determination. Her firm tone made it seem like she was dead set on it. In this case, I just lack an experimental material. You can replace it. Mato Akira, don't you want to wash away the shame for your father? How about I transform you into a one-eyed person first? In the gloomy laboratory. How is it? Staring at the haggard girl on the bed, Dustless asked indifferently, don't let people down, Jana Mingbo. Jana Mingbo wanted to cry but had no tears. It was not easy to transform a human into a one-eyed person. The probability was 1 in 1,000. He had done countless experiments, and in the end, only a few people succeeded. I will try my best. Jana Mingbo said. Try your best? Hearing this, Wu Chen's eyes shot out a cold light. With a bang, he kicked Jana Mingbo away. I can tell you clearly that if you fail, you don't have to continue living. Leaving behind a cold warning, Dustless swaggered off. Put on. Unexpectedly, just out of the laboratory, he met Takatsuki-sen, who was covered with blood, and fell directly in front of Dustless. What's the situation? Dustless stared at Takatsuki-sen with confusion. Takatsuki-sen's enemy was only the store manager Yoshimura Gakusen. According to Sen's strength, it was not a problem to kill the store manager. In the original work, the store manager Yoshimura Gakusen was beaten by several special investigators, and Takatsuki-sen killed those special investigators as soon as she appeared. It was enough to see the huge gap between the strength. Cough cough cough, with the support of Dustless, Takatsuki-sen barely stood up and smiled bitterly, I failed. After you left, I was ambushed by other organizations. Ambushed by other organizations? Dustless frowned deeply, and the first one he thought of was the V organization. The strength of this group of guys was self-evident. It was not a problem to defeat Takatsuki-sen, but according to the situation at that time, the V organization did not need to intervene in the battle between the store manager and Takatsuki Senator after all. Both Sen and the store manager were the enemies of the V organization. Wasn't it better to sit and watch them kill each other? There was no need to meddle in other people's business. Since it was not the V organization, in addition, Dustless could only think of another organization. Is it the organization called Clown? Dustless asked Takatsuki-sen curiously. He still remembered that the mask maker was one of the members of the Clown organization. The strength of this organization was also good, and its origin was very mysterious. Chapter 2045. Yes, it's them. Takatsuki-sen's eyes were filled with anger, and she said angrily, those bastards plotted against me after you left. Jason and the others were also assassinated, and Tatara and Noroi were also dead, all because of the hateful Clown organization. When talking about the Clown organization, Takatsuki-sen showed her killing intent, and she didn't have a good impression of it. Is it? Hearing this, Dustless's performance was mediocre. whether it was to Tara or Noroi, or that Jason, Dustless didn't know them, he just barely spoke a few words. If they died, there was nothing to be sad about. That is to say, Yoshimura Goshin was rescued by Clown, right? Dustless asked calmly, his eyes were shining with cold light, and he had already sentenced the Clown organization to death in his heart. Everyone didn't interfere with each other's business, but this group of unsightly guys were really clowns, they had to come out to play. Since they wanted to go to the Elysium so much, Dustless had to help them once. Right, there is another news to tell you. Takatsuki-sen, who was panting, suddenly thought of something. She was very worried. Originally, I was ambushed by a large group of people of Clown. I almost couldn't support it, but in the end, Arima Kisho suddenly appeared, and other ghouls investigators also appeared, and launched an attack on the people of Clown organization. I had the opportunity to escape. Otherwise, I am afraid that I will really be besieged to death. Takatsuki-san was still scared. It was not impossible for ants to kill an elephant. This is interesting. Dustless heard the words and nodded slowly, and immediately said to Takatsuki-san with his back, so the secret transaction between you and Arima Kisho, in this way, is it successful? After all, CCG has collapsed and your purpose has been completed. What did you say? I don't understand. Looking at Dustless's terrible eyes, Takatsuki-san finally lowered her head without confidence. Hee. Hearing this, Dustless just smiled faintly and explained, who is the one-eyed king before you? You should know this better than I do, right? Arima Kisho had human blood and ghoul blood, and he was also the old one-eyed king, and he also made some kind of unknown cooperation with Takatsuki's senator. The relationship between the two was not as simple as enemies. Even to some extent, Arima Kisho was Takatsuki-sen's enemy, but he just pretended to be her enemy. How did you know all this? Takatsuki-sen was shocked and speechless. She looked at Dustless with her lips trembling. She was also shocked and could not calm down. How do you know? Dustless couldn't help laughing when he heard the words, and it was rare for him to explain. He said bluntly, Izumi, the purpose of you and Arima Kisho is nothing more than to break the current situation, but now that CCG has been destroyed, what do you think will happen to you and Arima Kisho? Rubbing his chin, Dustless said seriously, you said that you encountered the group of people from the Clown, and were in danger. And at this time, Arima Kisho appeared. Don't you think this is too much of a coincidence? Takatsuki-san was stunned at first, then frowned and asked, what do you mean? Dustless's speech and behavior revealed a strange feeling. Takatsuki-san was not intelligent, but she was also quick-witted. She keenly smelled that Dustless's words had other meanings. For example, with a gloomy face, Dustless said coldly, when the purpose of each other is achieved, it also means that your previous cooperation is over, on the contrary. In other words, since CCG was defeated by me, you and Arima Kisho are already enemies, do you understand? This is impossible. Takatsuki-sen's face suddenly changed. When she was about to say something to fight back against Dustless, a sudden change occurred. Boom boom boom. The huge explosion sound was deafening, followed by the sound of fighting suddenly sounded. Don't let ghouls go. All ghouls must die. They are not qualified to live in this world. Chaotic noises suddenly resounded, and the violent vibrations made the members of the Aojirai tree confused. How could the base be invaded so suddenly? It seems that it is the same as what I imagined. Seeing this, Dustless's eyes were cold, and he said coldly, if I didn't guess wrong, the reason why Arima Kisho let you come back is to use you to find the base of Aojirai tree, and then destroy everyone. For him, Aojirai tree is also an enemy. For the New World Order, the existence of Aojirai tree will only cause more uneasiness. How is this possible? Takatsuki-san widened her eyes and looked at Dustless suspiciously, and said, Arima Kisho and I are cooperating. He doesn't. I said before, that was before. You had a common goal before, so naturally you could cooperate, but now this obstacle has disappeared, your cooperation is naturally over. Dustless said, the so-called cooperation was completely nonsense. To put it bluntly, the two sides had common interests to go together. Damn Arima Kisho, he dares to use me. Looking around and finding a large number of ghouls investigators, Takatsuki-sen's face was pale. Now she could be sure that she was played by Arima Kisho and others. These ghouls investigators were obviously prepared. As Dustless said, the ghouls investigators secretly followed Takatsuki Sr., but these idiots are really not afraid of death. Now CCG has become a street rat that everyone wants to kill. These guys still don't forget to destroy ghouls. They are really dedicated. Dustless's face was full of ridicule. It seemed that he was praising ghouls, but in fact, there was a cold chill behind him. The ground under his feet had clearly visible ice. Chapter 2046. Too hard to break? Dustless's words fell into the ears of Sasaki Hiroshi. His body seemed to be suddenly electrocuted, and the attack that was about to cut Dustless's head suddenly stopped. What does this mean? Sasaki Hiroshi glanced at Dustless, who was smiling evilly, and suddenly felt that Dustless's words had a hidden meaning, especially his obscure eyes, which revealed a hint of other meanings. Idiot, don't you understand this? Although you have changed your name, your head is still as stupid as before. Dustless pointed to his neck with a contemptuous tone. Now try to cut it, and you will immediately understand how fragile and powerless you are. You are looking for death. Sasaki Hiroshi was furious when she heard this, and her strength increased by 3 points. The blood-red broadsword that stopped once again broke out a stronger force. Whoosh! In the air, there was a sharp edge that was visible to the naked eye. Idiot, pay attention, this is not a joke. If your neck is broken, you will die. Seeing that Dustless completely ignored Sasaki Hiroshi, Kaneki Ken, Takatsuki-sen was worried for once and had to remind Dustless to pay attention. She had to understand that the current Sasaki Hiroshi was not the same as the previous Kaneki Ken. He had forgotten the memory of the past and completely regarded himself as a white dove of CCG. For the so-called ghouls, he would never show any mercy. However, the next incredible scene happened. Under everyone's dumbfounded gaze, the deadly broadsword cut Dustless's head. This guy is going to die. Special investigators such as Kuroiwa Iwao and Maruditsuki saw that Dustless was indifferent, and he didn't even look at Sasaki Hiroshi. Everyone was overjoyed. Even if the recovery ability of ghouls was so powerful, if their heads were cut off, they would definitely die. Clang clang clang. The blade cut the back of Dustless's head, and there was a clear roar, like the sound of two pieces of steel colliding. The most strange thing was that Dustless's head was like an iron ball, and the moment it was cut, there were bright sparks. Gotcha! Finally, under everyone's surprised gaze, the seemingly strong long sword was broken directly. Are you kidding? How hard is this guy's head? After a few seconds of silence, everyone suddenly burst out, and everyone looked at Dustless in horror. Is this still the head of a ghoul? Is it so hard? Everyone's head was dizzy, they always felt that they were watching a movie, and everything was so ridiculous. Sword, but it is too brittle. Glancing at Sasaki Hiroshi, Dustless said lazily, do you understand how fragile you are now? Do you understand the meaning of, too hard makes it easy to break? Because I am harder than you. It was not that Dustless looked down on Sasaki Hiroshi, but this guy was too weak. Even if Arima Kisho had trained him a lot, he was still too weak. This time, I will let you die completely. With a cold look, Wu-chan lifted his right foot and covered it with a layer of golden light. Light speed kick. After about a few seconds of silence, the light on Dustless's right foot whistled out. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Although Sasaki Hiroshi retreated at the first time, compared with the speed of light, his speed was too slow, and he was hit almost instantly. In front of the light, no one was an exception. Boom boom boom. Kaneki Ken's body swept a huge fireball, and the burst of air shattered the glass of the building within 100 meters, and a huge flaming mushroom cloud swept across the void. Dustless didn't show the slightest mercy in this kick, so he must have suffered great damage. Boom boom boom. The hot fireball still continued to burn, and the surrounding temperature increased by hundreds of times. Even the steel was evaporated in an instant, and Kaneki Ken in the center could be imagined. Sasaki Hiroshi. Seeing this, a group of ghouls investigators was heartbroken, and all of them looked at Dustless with anger. Dustless glanced at Marutitsuki and Kuroiwa Iwao, these special investigators, and asked strangely, really, when did it start? When a ghoul died, your CCG's white dove is so sad? It's like your brother or sister died. What do you mean? Marutitsuki and Kuroiwa Iwao's faces changed slightly, and they couldn't figure out what Dustless was talking about. What an idiot. No, perhaps Arima Kisho is too smart, deceiving you people who have no idea what is going on in your head. Dustless looked at this group of people with contempt, and immediately sneered, the Sasaki Hiroshi in your mouth is actually a ghoul. His name is Kaneki Ken, but his memory was later taken away by Arima Kisho. Impossible. Marutitsuki and others glared at him. It seemed that they really didn't know the true identity of Sasaki Hiroshi. Is it? Then you see it clearly. Pointing to the direction of the burning flame, Sasaki Hiroshi gradually revealed her original appearance. Oh. In the fire, there was a very terrible and depressed roar, full of endless bloody smell. Is it really a ghoul? A group of ghouls investigators was shocked. They fought with ghouls all year round, and they even said that as long as the other party was a ghoul, they could smell the difference. This heart-wrenching scream was definitely a ghoul. Why did Arima Kisho deceive us? Several ghouls investigators glared at him, and their fists were clenched. The feeling of being deceived by their own people was really uncomfortable. Chapter 2047. Why did I deceive you? Haven't you figured it out yet? Dustless looked at them with contempt. The heads of this group of CCG were slow as if they were rusty. Arima Kisho tricked this group of people to sell them, and they were probably stupid enough to count money for Arima Kisho. It could also be seen from this that this group of people respected Arima Kisho very much. Ouch! The roar that was no less than the screams of ghosts came out from Kaneki Ken's mouth. Everyone was shocked and looked at Kaneki Ken in panic. They saw that behind his back, a large number of thick cocoon emerged, and his appearance was terrible, densely covering all parts of his body. This is... Dustless narrowed his eyes when he saw this, and said in surprise, is he going to transform into Kakuja? This kid is amazing. He was kicked at the speed of light and didn't die, but he can transform into Kakuja. It's a miracle. Is this the so-called extreme things will go in the opposite direction? In fact, it was worth mentioning that Dustless's kick just now caused a fatal injury to Kaneki Ken, but the physique of ghouls was different from ordinary people, and the recovery power was really good, especially Kaneki Ken recovered. But, his eyes narrowed slightly, and the chakra in Dustless's body surged again. You are still alive, you can only continue to suffer. Why did Kaneki Ken suddenly change back to a ghoul? Dustless did not know the specific reason. He just temporarily lost his memory, which led to being tricked by Arima Kisho to become a CCG. Perhaps because of Dustless's kick, Kaneki Ken once again regained his memory of the past. Some people were born to be the kind of people who were favored by God, and their luck was too good. However, even if Kaneki Ken's whole body transformed into Kakuja, what can this change? It didn't have the slightest effect at all. His rapid recovery will only continue to ask for trouble. Laser. The straight light whistled out and went straight to Kaneki Ken, who had transformed into Kakuja. Ouch! He just roared twice very hoarsely. After realizing the danger, he stared at Dustless fiercely and moved away. He looked very unwilling. Boom boom boom. Flash's attack missed, and the place where Kaneki Ken was standing before was chiseled into a huge pit, and the scorched black hole was clearly visible. Is this guy really a ghoul? The rest of the ghoul investigators couldn't help but be stunned, and then they all stared at Dustless speechlessly and fearfully. A ghoul that can use light beams? Such a heaven-defying existence was not something that ordinary humans could contend against. Even Arima might not be able to defeat this guy. All the special investigators nodded affirmatively in their hearts. Everyone immediately looked at each other and could see the anger in each other's eyes. Arima Kisho was not Dustless's opponent, so sending this group of investigators, isn't it looking for death? Obviously, Arima Kisho deliberately pushed them into the fire pit. Ayo! Kaneki Ken's throat emitted a few more sharp screeches. Immediately after, a large number of red Kagun rushed out from his back and bit down like pythons. Of course, Dustless would not resign himself to his fate. His eyes widened, and he immediately launched a fierce counterattack. Tensho! Boom boom boom. The dark evil fire burned from the Kagun without warning, and quickly swallowed Kaneki Ken's Kagun, and it was about to swallow him. Being burned by Tensho, Kaneki Ken screamed in pain, and then saw the flame that was about to affect him, and a strong sense of determination flashed in his eyes. Puchi! With a wave of his hand, Kaneki Ken decisively tore the Kagun on his back to avoid being pulled into the nightmare by Tensho. Grew! Then just a little bit of force, the broken Kagun on Kaneki Ken's back once again erupted the red monster worms, like a tail, and recovered. Ha ha ha. The sound of grinding teeth came from Kaneki Ken's ugly external analysis. He seemed to be laughing. Idiot who doesn't know what's good for him. Seeing this, Dustless just shook his head and sighed softly. Immediately, the void on the right-hand side suddenly rippled, and then the long sword with a red handle shot out from it. At the moment when the Tachi appeared, the air quickly heated up, and the ground was strangely dry, and shocking cracks flashed, like a dry land without rain for many years, and there were spider web-like cracks everywhere, enough to fit a human arm. Give you a luxurious funeral, it's a great honor for you to die under this move. Dustless chuckled and raised the long sword in his hand, and then whispered, Bankai Zenka Fire Tachi. Buzz buzz buzz. After the Bankai, the water in the air accelerated the evaporation, and the surrounding vegetation and the blood in the corpse were all evaporated in an instant. Ouch! Kaneki Ken was obviously aware of the danger, and his body suddenly burst out with amazing power, and swooped down desperately. Phew! A huge shadow whizzed over, and human eyes couldn't keep up with such a fast speed, and they could only see a fleeting black shadow quickly passing by. Come on! Dustless raised the blade indifferently, and then after aiming at Kaneki Ken's body, the charred Zenka Fire Tachi suddenly swung down, an array of destructive edge appeared at the front. Zenka Fire Tachi North Ashes of Heaven and Earth. The huge blade was terrible as if it could destroy the world, and the void along the way melted, an unknown liquid inexplicably slid down, as if the sky was crying, and the scene was extremely horrifying. The super slash of 15 million degrees could destroy everything it touched, and even the supreme sky was no exception. Puff! The edge finally hit Kaneki Ken, and after a slight tremor, his hard body was torn apart. The blade didn't even explode, and directly obliterated Kaneki Ken. The huge body evaporated in an instant, turning into nothingness and disappearing without a trace. Chapter 2048. Such a powerful strength shocked everyone, whether it was Takatsuki's son or those special ghouls investigators, they were all staring at Dustless. It was not that they were narrow-minded and had not seen the world, but the strength that Dustless showed really refreshed everyone's understanding. Next. Wu Chen's casual sight swept across the several special investigators one by one. Wu Chen's light tone, however, made everyone's spirit shake. Do you think we are stupid? If we go one by one, won't we be defeated by you one by one? Maruditsuki said with a sneer. Didn't Dustless underestimate their IQ? Ha ha ha, self-righteous stupid things. After hearing the words, Dustless couldn't help but laugh and said sarcastically, Funny, do you think you can defeat me together? The reason why I let you go one by one is to give you time to remember the past. Isn't it too ruthless to kill you all at once? Really, why do you bunch of white pigeons always think so badly of others? Bastard, let's go together. Kuroiwa Iwao was too lazy to continue the nonsense. He waved his hand, and several ghouls investigators flocked to him. You have a lot of courage. Dustless smiled and said nothing. He sighed that they were brainless. He was still holding Zenka no Tachi in his hand. This group of so-called ghouls investigators dared to confront him directly, especially in close combat. Isn't this looking for death? If they were touched by the edge of Zenka no Tachi, they would be exactly like Kaneki Ken just now. Even their bodies would be swept away and evaporated. Attack him from different directions, avoid fighting with him directly. Kuroiwa Iwao looked at Dustless solemnly and greeted the rest of the investigators. A group of people nodded and surrounded Dustless from different directions. Before that, I have a question to ask you. After sorting out his thoughts, Dustless asked, you clearly know that you are used by Arima Kisho, you are just pure cannon fodder, why do you not hesitate to lose your life to fight with me? How about this, I will take you back, and you will go and kill Arima Kisho. Dustless smiled and said, the essence of that guy has always been a ghoul, but he hid in CCG and became a special investigator. Isn't this the biggest stain of your CCG? It won't be too late to kill Arima after I kill you. Maruditsuki waved his hand, and several special investigators surrounded from all directions. Phew. When he saw this, Dustless naturally wouldn't wait helplessly for death. Immediately, his eyes turned slightly and surging eye power instantly erupted. Shinra Tensei. Energy ripples visible to the naked eye erupted, and the tyrannical repulsive force instantly flattened the ground that Dustless was standing on. This guy sure has a lot of strange abilities. Hei Pan Yen looked at Dustless apprehensively. Seeing that Dustless's back was facing him, he quickly ran away. Shoo shoo shoo. Even if he was wearing a heavy armor, he couldn't stop the speed of Hei Pan Yen. In an instant, he was close to Dustless's back, and the shining sawtooth conch was like a shark's fangs. It had already slashed to Dustless's head. Poochie. In a flash, Dustless's whole body was split into two halves in an instant. Even because the strength was too strong, the powerful force even cracked the ground with a few meters-long cracks. Ha ha ha, finally died, this devil. Seeing Dustless's body, Hei Pan Yen was ecstatic and excited. The existence of Dustless had always been a huge pressure for their CCG. Shoo shoo shoo. At the same time, behind Hei Pan Yan's back, there was a sudden cold wind. Even if he was wearing armor, the evil wind still passed through the defense of the armor and blew over his whole body. Behind, Yen. Maruditsuki quickly shouted in panic. He was terrified to find that a black shadow whose speed was comparable to lightning was holding a hot sword to Hei Pan Yen. So fast. Hei Pan Yen shivered and turned his head to look. The black shadow that came into his eyes crossed layers of space, like a space jump. It was clearly a distance of dozens of meters, but it was just a moment. The cold sword had already been in the sky and slashed to his head. Who the hell is it? Hei Pan Yen opened his eyes focused on the black shadow, trying to identify its appearance. Poochie. The ideal was always beautiful, but the reality was extremely cruel. The falling sword drove straight in, and Hei Pan Yan's body was split into two halves in an instant. He didn't even see who it was. Boom. Then, the dark red sword, the body of the sword broke out a dangerous aura, the light wave of destruction burst out. The hot bursting flame swept out from the sword body, and Hei Pan Yan's body was evaporated into ashes. The heavy armor on his body also disappeared in an instant. Yen. His close friend was killed, Maruditsuki was heartbroken, and his eyes were bloodshot. He stared at the initiator of the evil, and the black shadow gradually showed a young appearance. The messy black short hair was dancing in the wind like weeds, and there was an evil smile at the corner of the mouth. The slightly squinted eyes always had a cynical smile, as if he was mocking the weak and fragile world, giving people a feeling of endless contempt. Aren't you dead? Maruditsuki was shocked, and his mouth was big enough to stuff a person's fist. Who was this person if not Dustless? But the strange thing was that he just saw Dustless was dismembered, and his body was still lying there. Dead? Hearing this, Dustless disdainfully curled his lips, and then showed a kind expression. I respect the old very much. Hei Pan Yen wants to kill me so much, I will let him kill me once. Otherwise, it won't be good if he still remembers me in heaven. Boom. As Dustless's voice fell, the body just now turned into a piece of wood. Of course, he killed me, it was just a simple clone technique. Chapter 2049. Maruditsuki looked at this scene with astonishment, and his heart was extremely sad for a moment. Was this a battle? According to Maruditsuki's experience of fighting for many years, this was not a battle, but a one-sided massacre. CCG was killed by Dustless, and they had no strength to fight back. The so-called special investigator was not worth mentioning at all in front of this man. It was hard for him to be elegant. There was nothing worthy of Wu Chen's attention. Izumi, looking at Takatsuki-sen, Dustless pointed to the group of corpses again. The meaning was self-evident. Takatsuki-sen saw the situation and showed gratitude, and immediately dragged her tired body slowly to the corpses of several special investigators. It seemed that she wanted to eat them. Stop. Seeing this, Maruditsuki's eyes were about to explode. He naturally understood what Takatsuki-sen wanted to do. You are overestimating yourself. Izumi just glanced at him coldly, and immediately continued to walk to the corpses of several ghouls investigators. She didn't need to care about it, everything was handed over to Dustless. I asked you to stop. Seeing that Takatsuki-san ignored his warning, Maruditsuki, who was full of anger, swooped down. Kunk, who was raised high, was about to penetrate Takatsuki-sen's body. Shoo shoo shoo. At the same time, Dustless's feet gently stepped on the ground, and his body suddenly disappeared like a ghost. Go to hell. Maruditsuki held the big sword with both hands. At the moment when it was about to be cut, a figure stood in front of him indifferently. The damn person is you. When the voice fell, the sword in the hand of the figure swept out. The hot edge was unstoppable. Puchi. The blade that was cut to Takatsuki-sen was cut off by the flame. The invincible Kunk was destroyed by the overwhelming power. Damn it. Maruditsuki's old face twitched a few times. He had no choice but to retreat urgently. You offended the god of death, can you still live? The cold tone sounded behind him. Maruditsuki looked back with a bitter smile and saw Dustless with a cold face. He asked speechlessly, tell me, who are you? No, or is it human or ghoul? For a long time, Maruditsuki had not figured out the racial problem of Dustless. This guy was too evil. No matter if it was a human or a ghoul, there was no such powerful ability. What race? It's not important. Dustless muttered to himself as he swung his Zenka no Tachi horizontally. Puchi. The blade cut through Maruditsuki's body. Even if there was an armor defense, it didn't work. At the moment when the two touched, the deadly Zenka no Tachi tore it like paper scraps. In front of Zenka Fire Tachi, everything was weak and powerless under the extreme temperature of 15 million degrees. Boom boom boom. At the moment when Maruditsuki's body was cut, Zenka no Tachi was the same as before, erupting a large number of bursting flames, erasing the whole person without a trace. Is the racial boundary really so important? You call me a human, I also accept it if you call me a ghoul, but you CCG did the wrong thing, that is standing on the opposite side of me. Dustless looked at the sky indifferently and muttered to himself. Really, you even destroyed the delicious food. Takatsuki-san looked at Dustless with resentment. She seemed to be extremely dissatisfied. After hearing the words, Dustless just glanced at Takatsuki-san faintly, and immediately passed by her. Shoo shoo shoo. It was also at this moment that a biting cold attack arrived as expected. Looking up, countless bone-like sharp blades whistled through the air in a manner that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Yo! This battle is really scary. Although his words were frightening, Wu Chen remained calm and collected on the surface. His eyes that were as calm as an ancient well were filled with calmness and composure. Puchi. 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 The sharp blades cut through Dustless's body, making his whole body full of holes. But it was worth mentioning that in the next second, the wounds were dazzling light, and then they recovered as before. Such an ordinary attack could be repaired by glinting fruit. Is it you? Dustless stared at this person. He was exactly the same as other CCG members, and he also wore the same uniform, but it was worth mentioning that this person had an eye. Who is this? At the same time, Takatsuki-san also found the appearance of this person. Seeing the evil face, her face suddenly tightened. From this person, Takatsuki-san unexpectedly felt a deadly pressure. Otoku Urfu? Are you finally willing to come out to die? Dustless sneered. Although he could crush the SSS-class ghouls, this did not mean anything. In the original book, Takatsuki-san was crushed by Otoku Urfu. Although the former was an SSS-class ghoul, it was still difficult to escape misfortune when encountering Otoku Urfu. And it was worth mentioning that the identity of this Otoku Urfu was extremely complicated. He was not only a member of the V organization, but also a member of the Clown. In addition, he was also an investigator of CCG, and had an inextricable relationship with Aojirai Tree. Chapter 2050. And the identity of Urfu was extremely special. He was exactly the same as Arima Kisho, with the blood of humans and ghouls in his body. He was half human. However, compared with Arima Kisho, Urfu's advantages were more obvious and outstanding. He was almost the same as Kaneki Ken. He was a one-eyed ghoul transformed by Kaneki Ken. He was extremely strong and could use Kagun. His strength was not weaker than Arima Kisho. Aya, you actually know me? Urfu squinted his eyes and put the briefcase in his hand on the ground. His smiling appearance looked very frivolous and casual, but his heart was shocked. What is the origin of this guy? Urfu was puzzled. Whether it was inside the V organization, the Clown organization, or CCG, his performance was extremely low-key, and he rarely showed off. Therefore, most people regarded Urfu as a small person who could not make waves. In fact, this guy was just a ferocious tiger with a weak appearance. I don't just know you. Dustless stared at Urfu faintly, and there was endless contempt in his words. I also know what your future is, and it is 100% accurate, and I never charge money for fortune-telling. Oh? Is that so? That's really something to look forward to. Tell me about it. Old duo Urfu's interest was inevitably piqued, and his face was filled with curiosity. It's very simple. The ethereal and indifferent tone fell. Dustless's whole body was covered with a bright streamer, and he rushed straight over. What awaits you in the future is simply a path to death. The tone full of strong killing intent spread across the vast sky, containing some kind of mysterious power, and did not dissipate for a long time. Urfu was extremely shocked. Where is that guy? So fast. Urfu looked around. He did not expect Dustless to be so powerful. In a flash, the whole person's breath disappeared. This speed refreshed Urfu's previous cognition. Compared with Dustless, Takatsuki-san, who was also an SSS-class ghoul, was as slow as a turtle. Phew. At the same time, on the right side of his cheek, there was a sudden dangerous movement, and the dazzling golden light made Urfu close his eyes. So fast. Enduring the discomfort in his eyes, old duo Urfu abruptly turned his head to look straight ahead. What entered his eyes was the whistling golden blade. Without even thinking, the strength in his body erupted to the limit in an instant. His feet stepped on the ground, and he quickly retreated. Ka. Due to old duo Urfu's strength, the ground beneath his feet instantly crumbled and turned into powder. Swish. Swish. Seeing that the materialized light sword was about to pierce through old duo Urfu's body turned into a stream of light and retreated, dodging the incoming light in a flash. Oh, your speed is quite fast. So far, you are the strongest ghoul I have ever seen. Dustless looked at old duo Urfu with appreciation and gave a thumbs up. It had to be said that old duo Urfu was really different from other ghouls. There was a huge gap. Not to mention the strength, just in terms of senses, this guy was far stronger than the ordinary ghouls. Who the hell is this kid? His speed is ridiculously fast. Dustless's indifference fell into the eyes of old duo Erfu, but it was a naked contempt and disdain. Suddenly he felt that his face was cold, and his vision was blurred. Old duo Erfu subconsciously reached out and touched it. Blood? Looking at the blood stains in his hand, old duo Erfu's sight was a little dazed for a while, and his thoughts could not help but solidify a few times. If he remembered correctly, in the past 10 years, it was the first time that he had been cut and bled. You deserve to die. Suddenly, that handsome face that could be considered calm suddenly became as terrifying as an evil spirit. Old duo Erfu's ferocious nature erupted. His entire person was like a hungry tiger, and there was even saliva dripping from his mouth. Poochie. The clothes on the back of old duo Erfu were all destroyed and collapsed in an instant. The dark red Kagun danced strangely, and the majestic killing intent came like a storm. Why is this bastard so strong? Takatsuki-sen's eyes widened. She didn't understand what Dustless felt, but Takatsuki-sen felt an unprecedented sense of insignificance from the momentum of old duo Erfu. Kagaku of Kamishiro Ryo? Dustless narrowed his eyes and stared at the Kagun that was more than 10 meters thick, and his cheeks were not moved. Go to hell. With a roar, the dense Kagun on the back of old duo Erfu became crazily bigger, as if it had taken hormones. It became as thick as a person in just a few seconds, and all of them were like cannonballs roaring. Seeing this, Dustless naturally would not give in. A large amount of light suddenly condensed in the palm of his hand, flashing a dangerous halo. Yasakani no Magatama. Dense flashes of light emerged from his hands, almost filling the entire sky, as many as locusts. Poochie. 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 The oncoming thick Kagun was immediately hit by a fatal blow, and it was hit by a hole. The burning light penetrated all the Kagun and turned it into a sieve. Not only that, after the dense light bullets crushed the Kagun, they still rushed to old duo Erfu without reducing their momentum. Damn guy, I have never heard of ghouls using this trick. Old duo Erfu screamed in horror, and immediately a large number of Kagun swept from his back again, wrapping his whole body. So many light eggs had no place to hide. In this case, he could only strengthen his own defense. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2051. Ka ka ka. A large number of Kagun gushed out from his back, wrapping Odo and Erfu tightly. It was the same from head to toe, making him look like a huge meatball. Clang clang clang. The light bullets all over the sky came and all hit Erfu's body, breaking his defense into pieces. Although Erfu Oldo's defense was strong, his strength definitely belonged to the shocking type. Being able to oppress Takatsuki-sen with his own momentum explained everything. His strength was not an undeserved reputation. However, as the saying goes, the virtue is 1 foot tall, the devil is 10 feet tall. Erfu Oldo chose the wrong opponent this time. Poochie. 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 Being ruthlessly attacked by Yasakani no Magatama, even if Erfu's body was wrapped with Kagun defense, it was also penetrated. The inside of his body was full of holes, and the shocking wounds were terrifying. Grew. However, these disorderly wounds were unable to affect the old duo Fu. In an instant, the collapsed wounds had already condensed into new, bright skin. Erfu was the original test material of Jana Mingbo, and he also inherited the Kaku of Kamishiro Rise. He had strong fighting power, strong resilience, and strong regenerative ability. Damn it, it hurts. Although serious wounds could be healed, it didn't mean that they were immune to pain. Old duo Erfu's body was beaten into a beehive. Especially Light's attack, which was extraordinary and carried a fatal heat. Old duo Erfu's entire body felt like it was being burned, and it grimaced in pain. Is it finally over? After a while, the light bullets stopped. Erfu completely untied the Kagun wrapped around his body, opened his eyes and silently observed the outside world. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The dazzling lights suddenly flashed and rushed in a straight line. The speed was so fast that it was difficult to catch. When he recovered, Urfu suddenly felt a pain in his left arm. Poochie. A cold light flashed, and a trace of blood splashed into the void. This is, turning his head to look, Urfu's pupils suddenly solidified, and he was shocked to find that his left arm was cut off. When did it start? Old Duo Fuku was shocked. Although losing an arm was nothing to him, anyway, he was a one-eyed ghoul, and he also inherited the scales of Kamishiro Rise, and he could regenerate it. But, what made old Duo Fuku shocked was that he was sure that it was Dustless who cut off his arm, and he didn't even have a little time to react. Don't put on such a shocked expression. It's not that I'm too fast, it's just that you're too slow. In the end, it's because you're too weak. Dustless's lazy voice suddenly came from behind. Old Duo Erfu was still looking back with a confused expression. Little did they know that Dustless was standing in front of them openly. You bastard. Old Duo and Erfu almost spat out a mouthful of blood when they heard this. They were so angry that they were stamping with rage. Were the old majority and the second fortune weak? Perhaps for Dustless, he was really weak, but looking at this world, he definitely belonged to the predator standing at the top of the pyramid, the overlord of the overlords. He could crush the SSS-class ghouls. Who could fight against this kind of strength? But unfortunately, he met Dustless, who was more powerful. Saying that he was weak, although this was harsh, it was true. For Dustless, old Duo Erfu belonged to the fragile type. Buzz, on his back, a thick tail broke out again. This time it was more exaggerated. The scales spread nearly 20 meters long, and the thickness was even more exaggerated than the human body. Immediately afterward, Urfu mobilized the strength of his whole body and lifted the thick Kagun giant whip, standing in the void, and then his eyes were tightly focused on the position where Dustless was, and he slammed it down. Insignificant skill. Seeing the giant Kagun long whip falling down, Dustless's face changed slightly. It was not fear or fear, but the first time he saw that Kagun could be manipulated like this, it looked very fresh. Ken Susanu. His eyes blinked gently, and the surging substantialized chakra broke out of his body. In the void, the floating shadow was faintly discernible. Its huge body could not be said to cover the sky, but the moment it appeared, the high fighting spirit in the hearts of old Duo and old Fu was instantly extinguished. What the hell is this thing? Looking at the giant monster on Dustless's body, Urfu's cheeks were straight, and the huge Kagun long whip that was smashed to Dustless was also stiff in the air. Looking closely, on Dustless's body, a golden giant suddenly swept out, holding a golden light sword, and the scarlet eyes seemed to be bigger than the human head. Bang! The Kunktachi in Otoku's hand also fell to the ground in a daze. He was not only one-eyed, but also a ghoul investigator. What is there to fight? Looking at the terrifying giant, for the first time, Urfu had such a feeling of despair. It was not that the old Duo blessings were too weak, but that Wuchen was too heaven-defying. It was fine if he could use them all, but he still had other abilities. Now that he had summoned such an oppressive monster, even the determination of the old Duo blessings was shaken. Boom boom boom. The mature body Ken Susanu moved, and the ground trembled slightly. He raised the golden sword, and then endless sharpness emerged. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The light sword slashed down, and the blade whistled out. All the materials along the way collapsed, even the ground was cut into pieces, and a hideous crack appeared and stretched to the distance. Poochie. Urfu naturally could not escape the misfortune, and his body was crushed into pieces in an instant. It was not that he did not want to escape, but from the beginning to the end, the whistling wind of the sword was terrifying, and the speed was comparable to lightning, and the body of Urfu was smashed all of a sudden. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2052. Poochie. The huge movement fell, Urfu's body exploded. Even if he had carried out the necessary defense before, Urfu's body was as fragile as paper under Kansusuna's blade. Boom boom boom. The dazzling slash suddenly exploded and turned into a tyrannical wave that spread out. Kakaka. Even if most of the power had been released, the remaining fluctuations were still extremely violent, and the nearby abandoned buildings were destroyed by the terrifying fluctuations in an instant. This should be the end for them. Takatsuki-san said with great relief, looking at the shocking earth. She was relieved and couldn't help but admire her original wise decision. Perhaps standing on the opposite side of Dustless, her end will be exactly the same as Urfu. It's over? Dustless heard the words and glanced at Takatsuki-san faintly, and immediately said coldly, "Not yet. This kid's regeneration ability is good, almost to the point where he can come back from the dead. You take a closer look." Grew. The voice just fell, as Dustless said. Urfu's body began to slowly regenerate, and the broken and shattered body condensed again. "You bastard." Urfu, who recovered, was angry and stared at Dustless, and his eyeballs almost fell out. Looking closely, this guy was full of bright red blood everywhere, and his whole body was full of bloody smell, as if he had just come out of the blood pool in the hell, filled with an unknown atmosphere. How is it possible? Is his recovery so strong? Is he still a ghoul? Takatsuki-san was shocked when she saw this. She didn't expect Urfu to be so strong, especially in terms of recovery. It seemed that it was even stronger than the combat power. If this guy's combat power is 10, then Urfu's recovery power is 15. Staring at Urfu, Dustless gently looked around, and said softly, "But it seems that the consumption is also very high." Hoo-hoo-hoo, old duo Urfu panted heavily, looking extremely tired. After all, recovery was not without a price. From old duo Urfu's sweaty expression, it was obvious that recovery was very strenuous, and the consumption was huge. "Looks like I'm no match for him. I have to choose someone else to deal with." Old duo and Urfu looked at Dustless in fear and found that they were not on the same level at all. Dustless could easily crush him. If he continued to fight blindly, he would undoubtedly die. How about, his cold sight fell on Takatsuki-sen, and a cunning smile flashed on his cheeks. Swish. Swish. In the blink of an eye, his speed was pushed to the limit, and he turned into a gust of wind. "I'll use you as my hostage." A cruel and ferocious smile appeared on the face of Otoku Urfu, and the thick kagun on his back broke out again, rushing to Takatsuki-sen like a long whip. Damn it. Seeing this, Takatsuki-sen was secretly angry. She was also an SSS class ghoul, but at the moment, she was like a burden. Not only did she not help Dustless, but she became the straw of Otoku Urfu's life. Light speed kick. Seeing that the kagun was about to bind Takatsuki-sen, a dazzling flash tore it apart. Boom boom boom. When the light beam was close to the kagun, the two exploded, and the shock wave blew Otoku Urfu back again, and he almost fell to the ground. Why is it so strong? Why? I don't accept it. I have put in more effort than anyone else, but in the end, I'm not as good as a guy with an inexplicable origin. It's ridiculous. The miserable old duo Fu roared at the sky, but in the end, they were unable to withstand the aftershock of the lightspeed kick, and were constantly forced back. They even fell to the ground on their butts, landing on their backs in an extremely pathetic state. "This time, I'll let you disappear cleanly." Dustless sneered when he saw the situation. His fingertips were gently lifted, and a good energy ball was formed in an instant. Kakaka. The void suddenly collapsed like powder, and a huge vortex appeared. As the energy ball in Dustless's hand rotated, it changed and expanded his own domain. Wang Su's flash. At the moment when the voice fell, the golden energy ball that was brewing in his hand flicked out and turned into a thick light, like a rainbow rushing to Otoku Urfu. Boom boom boom. The void suddenly exploded, and the huge super explosion evaporated the body of Otoku Urfu. Although Otoku Urfu desperately fled at the moment when they were about to fall, the effect was minimal, or even negligible, the attack of the void completely ignored the existence of the distance. Kakaka. The sky within 100-meter radius trembled violently. The void was shattered by the energy fluctuations that spread out in all directions, and cracks appeared everywhere like a mirror. The original blue sky, affected by the Wang Su's flash, turned into a dark night. As for Otoku Urfu, it was even more tragic. His body was directly melted and evaporated by the strong fluctuations. To be able to die under this move, it's your fortune, kid. Dustless stretched, regardless of the shock. Takatsuki-sen turned and left. In fact, this was nothing. For Dustless, it was just a small problem that could be solved with a wave of his hand. Wang Su's flash was an extremely powerful move, and no matter or creature could be excluded from it. It was powerful enough to crush the horizon, and the huge vortex in the void was enough to prove how powerful this move was. It was truly a convenient move for small fries like Old Duo and Urfu. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2053. The death of Urfu was just a trivial episode. For Dustless, this kind of small character was not worth mentioning at all, and there was no value to continue to explore. What's more, Urfu's body was not preserved at all, and there was no research value. He died just like that? Takatsuki-san said to herself woodenly, like a machine without any emotion. Yeah, such a nonentity, wasted so much of my time, he should rest in peace in the underworld. Dustless also sighed, and immediately passed by Takatsuki Sr. Seeing that Dustless misunderstood her meaning, Takatsuki-san quickly changed her words. When she turned her head to speak, Dustless was already 100 meters away. Who the hell is this guy? Takatsuki-san's beautiful eyes were full of hesitation. For the first time in her life, she fell into a dead end of thinking. Dustless was like a mountain in front of her, it was difficult to understand. Without exception, everyone who witnessed Dustless's strength was filled with curiosity towards this unknown life form. After all, its strength was too heaven-defying. Whether it was a ghoul or a ghoul investigator, compared with Dustless, they were thousands of miles away. Is this something that humans and ghouls can do? Definitely not. We are going against the heavens. What god? That guy Wu Chen isn't like that. He's a monster that's even more powerful than the heavens. The rats who were secretly observing the changes in the battlefield were all stunned by Dustless's terrifying strength. Originally, they wanted to take advantage of the time when both sides were injured to launch a sneak attack, but they did not expect Dustless to be so heaven-defying. That overwhelming strength almost shattered their eyeballs. Although Old Duo Urfu was unexpectedly powerful, but from the current situation, it seemed that even 100 of him added together would not be Dustless's match. The manager of the antique coffee shop, Yoshimura Gakusan, took a deep breath. He did not expect Dustless to be so shocking. As one of the members of the V organization, Urfu's strength was beyond doubt. Yoshimura Gakusan even suspected that if he wanted to kill him, he did not need to send other people, just CCG was enough. However, what could he do? He was still beaten by Dustless, and even Urfu's body was not left. It's better to go back. Seeing that the atmosphere was a bit subtly stiff, Kirishima Tuka had to stand up and say, Dustless is too powerful, we are just looking for trouble with him. Although her younger brother, Akane Kirishima, was killed by Wu Chen, Tuka Kirishima retreated when she saw Wu Chen's strength that could destroy the world with a snap of his fingers. She had no hope for revenge. Boom boom boom. Looking up, the void was still violently torn apart. The sky within a radius of a few hundred meters was pitch black. The pitch black hole seemed to be connected to the abyss of the universe. No one dared to walk under the black sky, for fear of being sucked in and torn to pieces. Kirishima Tuka could not help but be stunned. It was not that she forgot her brother's death, but there was a very accurate voice in her heart that warned her that she would die if she followed. If she died, Kirishima Tuka would not care, but if the store manager and others died, Kirishima took his heart was really sorry. Dustless's strength left an indelible mark in her heart. You see, Ba. The store manager Yoshimura Gakusen looked at Ba, who was silent. In the last battle with Takatsuki-sen, if it was not for this guy and other members of the clown organization to help, he was afraid that he would have been destroyed. No matter what, with our strength, we are definitely not Dustless's opponent. Ba said an answer that everyone knew, and immediately bowed his head and pondered for a moment. I suggest to retreat, challenging Dustless is just looking for death. Bullshit. At this time, a very rude voice suddenly sounded. It was a young man with a handsome face. This person was Jukiyama Shi, who Dustless had met when he was still working in the antique coffee shop. At this moment, Jukiyama Shi's face was distorted, which was completely different from his usual elegant and extraordinary speech. Kaneki was killed? We must not let Dustless go, we must revenge for Kaneki, he is a companion. Jukiyama Shi stared at Dustless's back with hatred. If it was not for the store manager Yoshimura Gakusen who held him tightly, this guy would have run to kill him. Companion my ass. Everyone heard the words and rolled their eyes. To put it bluntly, Jukiyama Shi came for Kaneki Ken's body. Unfortunately, he had been killed by Dustless with his body, so Jukiyama Shi naturally hated him. Why don't we cooperate with Arima Kisho? The store manager Yoshimura Gakusen's eyes flashed, and he said with great agreement, now CCG has been completely wiped out, and only Arima Kisho is left alone. I am afraid that he knows that he is not Dustless's opponent, so he temporarily hid. Hearing this, everyone was silent. A ghoul organization looking for CCG to cooperate? Especially a character like Arima Kisho, what a joke. At present, this is the only way. After hesitating for a while, Ba reluctantly nodded and agreed. After thinking about it carefully, it was not hopeless. After all, CCG and the clown organization now had a common enemy, Dustless. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2054. Hey, Alliance? Ghouls and CCG Alliance? I always feel that it's ridiculous. The store manager Yoshimura Kozen shook his head and sighed. When did the alliance between ghouls and CCG begin? Although he used to be the sweeper of the V organization, the store manager still resisted this. Moreover, Arima Kisho, who cooperated with him, once cut off his arms. It was really difficult for them to abandon the past and come together. It seems that this is the only way for now. Soon, the store manager Yoshimura Kozen felt relieved. At present, the ghouls and CCG were almost all killed by Dustless. The resentment of the past could be solved, if not, it could only be reduced to a small matter. There was no way, there was Dustless, such a powerful character, he could only temporarily walk on this road. On the other side, in the warehouse filled with a stench. A white-haired young man sat on the ground with dull eyes. Although there were a lot of water stains around him, and his clothes and pants were wet, and the cold air spread all over his body, the white-haired young man was still unmoved. He didn't even blink his eyes. He looked at the narrow iron window blankly, and powerlessness flashed in the depths of his eyes from time to time. Old duo, that guy was actually killed, this person's dry mouth whispered softly, and his eyes showed the color of memories. It seemed that the relationship with Urfu was quite good, at least they had known each other for a while. This person was Arima Kisho. Originally, he thought that Urfu could defeat Dustless. Who would have thought that the final result was not flattering? The person who was crushed turned out to be Urfu, who was not weaker than him, and even his body was not left. His end was extremely miserable. The previous special ghouls investigators were also completely wiped out. Who are you? Get out of here. At this moment, Arima Kisho suddenly screamed, and suddenly turned his head to look. The black shadows floated in the darkness. Looking carefully, he saw that it was Ba and the store manager Yoshimura Kozen. Are you here to seek revenge? Seeing the traces of the two, Arima Kisho's eyes became cold. Of course not. Ba shook his head and bluntly said, if it was a sneak attack, the two of us would have already launched an attack. Why should we continue to stand here and talk nonsense with you? Humph, do you think you can defeat me just by joining hands? Arima Kisho's face remained calm, but there was deep disdain in his words. It seemed that he was saying that it didn't matter even if the two of them came together. This guy, the store manager, Yoshimura Kozen, frowned, and his arm began to hurt. A long time ago, when Arima Kisho was about 20 years old, he repelled the store manager with his shocking strength, tore off his arms, and used the store manager's Kagun to make an SSS-level Kunk owl. It had to be said that Arima Kisho really had the capital to be arrogant. Why don't we cooperate? After a moment of silence, Ba's tone was very weak and uncertain. Boom 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 boom. But this low tone, in the ears of Arima Kisho, was like a thunderbolt. He looked at the store manager, Yoshimura Kozenhai, with a rare expression of shock. Cooperate? Glancing at the two of them suspiciously, Arima Kisho's first thought was a trap. Why should I cooperate with you? Don't you think it's ridiculous? Of course. Manager Yoshimura Kozenhai sighed and said, you may think that I want to retaliate against you. To be honest, I have such an idea. But, then the store manager's tone became a little gentler, and he persuaded, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. If you don't mind, we don't mind cooperating. Let's talk about personal grievances later. The enemy of my enemy? Hearing this, Arima Kisho's face lit up. He nodded seriously and agreed, to some extent, we are indeed on the same path. Everyone's enemy is dustless. If it was before, Arima Kisho would naturally disdain to cooperate with the store manager, but now it was different. He couldn't support himself alone. It was unrealistic to fight against dustless alone. Therefore, he could only have a strong combination. Since there is no way to go, I will gamble with you. Arima Kisho was not an idiot. At present, he was already at the end of the road. As the store manager said, although everyone was enemies with each other, they must go together now. Sooner or later, they will be defeated by Dustless one by one. After killing Dustless, it is not too late to kill you. Looking at Yoshimura Kozenhai and Yoshimura Kozenhai, Arima Kisho secretly decided that there was no loss to him anyway. At the same time, in the base of Aojirai tree. How is the transformation? Looking at Jana Mingbo, Dustless asked. This guy was still covered with blood. It seemed that he had just come out of the operating room. There was a bloody smell all over his body. This, looking at Dustless with a little fear in his eyes, Jana Mingbo carefully said, it is almost finished. As for whether it can be done, I don't know. The essence of the operation was actually very simple, to turn ghouls into humans. Of course, the humans mentioned here were not real humans, but half-humans like Arima Kisho. Although they also had the blood of ghouls, they did not need to eat human flesh, nor would they be exposed, and their strength would not be weakened. Just like Arima Kisho and Otoya, both of them had the blood of half-humans, but what about their strength? Everyone was stronger than Takatsuki-sen, the one-eyed king who was an SSS-class ghoul. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers, 3,000 rewards, 1,000 comments, 500 automatic subscriptions. Chapter 2055. Gulp. Jana Mingbo was so scared by Dustless's words that he broke out in cold sweat. His cheeks looked at the former in a daze. He knew that this was definitely not a joke. After following Dustless for a while, Jana Mingbo gradually understood Dustless's temper. The consequences of angering this guy were absolutely unimaginable. Ao 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 ao. At this moment, Kamishiro Rise roared twice in an extremely cooperative manner. She looked like she was hungry and couldn't choose food. Her saliva flowed out, causing Jana Mingbo's heart to palpitate. I'll go now, wait a moment. Jana Mingbo was so scared that he almost jumped up and fled like a gust of wind. During this period of time, he used Kamishiro Rise to do all kinds of cruel experiments every day. This woman hated him to death. If she had the chance to eat him, Kamishiro Rise would definitely not be soft-hearted. You look very healthy. After staring at Kamishiro Rise for a while, Dustless slowly walked over. You dare to walk over? Approaching me rashly? You simply don't know how to write the word death. Seeing this, Kamishiro Rise was expressionless, but her heart was filled with killing intent. Although I don't know what that old man did to me, but thanks to him, I have become a lot stronger. Feeling the surging power change in her body, Kamishiro Rise's mouth revealed a cruel smile. Plop plop. Kamishiro Rise's heart beat faster. Looking at the gradually approaching Dustless, the power of her limbs had already reached the limit. Shio shio shio. When she was about 3 or 4 meters away, Kamishiro Rise's feet suddenly stepped on the ground. Ka ka ka. The ground that couldn't withstand the powerful explosive force had a messy crack. Then, Kamishiro Rise, who was standing in the same place, disappeared without a trace. Her speed was fast enough to be comparable to the speed of sound. This guy's explosive power is really strong. Faint ripples splashed in the calm eyes. Dustless looked quite shocked. He was not frightened by the strength of Kamishiro Rise. Even if Kamishiro Rise's current strength was x 100 times, she was not Dustless's opponent. What was surprising was that a few days ago, the strength of Kamishiro Rise was still around the SS class. A few days later, although it had not reached the level of SSS class, the data of various aspects far exceeded the SS class ghouls. It's useless for you to regret it now. This is the result of you daring to experiment on me at will. Be obedient to be my food. Not knowing when it started, Kamishiro Rise's arms had already tightly hugged Wu Chen. She looked at Wu Chen's face with hostility. It seems that you have really succeeded. Staring at Kamishiro Rise with interest, Dustless said with a smile, to be honest, it's really surprising that you can evolve into a half-human like Arima Kisho. No, you even have more advantages than one-eyed and half-human. It should be said that you can become an existence between the two now, thanks to the old man Janamiko. With him, you can complete this huge transformation, and your strength has also been greatly improved. Haha, hearing this, Kamishiro Rise just smiled gloomily. No matter what, thanks to you, my strength can be improved. In order to express my gratitude, I will accept your meat. Tightly holding Dustless, the two bodies were squeezed together. The strength of Kamishiro Rise's hands was enough to strangle a cow. Ka ka ka. Dustless's body bones began to sound, and even the sound of breaking could be heard. Kamishiro Rise looked up at Dustless's eyes. This guy was surprisingly calm, and his calm eyes were filled with eternal calmness. This guy, Kamishiro Rise, who had already seen the hardness of Dustless's body, was only a little shocked. Then she recovered her calmness, and immediately revealed her white teeth and bit Dustless's neck. Strange, but the moment she touched Dustless's skin, Kamishiro Rise's mouth instinctively stopped. She didn't know why, but she didn't have any desire to eat human flesh. Instead, she felt that eating human flesh was very disgusting. TSK. It seems that she really succeeded. Wu Chen, who was quietly staring at Kamishiro Rise's expression, suddenly revealed a mysterious smile. What do you mean? Kamishiro Rise's face stiffened, and then she questioned Dustless in a very unfriendly tone. Listening to Dustless's words, it seemed that he deliberately let himself be caught. Originally, Kamishiro Rise was happy in her heart, but now she felt uncomfortable, like she had eaten a fly. What do you mean? Looking directly at Kamishiro Rise's gloomy eyes, Dustless sneered, that old man Jana Mingbo is too slow. I just want to use my body to test you, and the result is the same as I thought. You don't eat human flesh anymore. In other words, you deliberately let me get close to you? Kamishiro Rise's face turned pale. Nonsense, otherwise, do you think you can get close to me with your trash strength? Dustless snorted disdainfully, and then looked at Kamishiro Rise's pretty face, and teased, I heard before that the IQ of a girl in love is always negative. But now I have a different idea, a hungry girl tortured by hunger. Her brain is even more pitiful. You're courting death. Hearing this, Kamishiro Rise was furious, and her face turned red. She opened her mouth to the maximum and bit Dustless's cheek. It didn't matter whether she liked human flesh or not, she just wanted to destroy this annoying face at this moment. Unexpectedly, Dustless just blinked his eyes, and a majestic eye power surged out, and Kamishiro Rise's crazy movements instantly stopped. Tsukuyomi. Plop. The two simple words were like a death sentence, and Kamishiro Rise instantly fell to the ground. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2056. Kamishiro Rise's body twitched slightly, sweating profusely. Her face was as pale as paper, as if she had encountered a legendary demon. Her whole body was twitching strangely, and it was not much different from a mental disorder. What a useless woman. How boring. She was shouting so fiercely before, saying that she wanted to kill me and eat me. Now, she's fallen so easily. Sure enough, people who like to spout nonsense are insignificant ants. Dustless glanced at Kamishiro Rise and left. Cough cough. At this moment, Kamishiro Rise suddenly coughed and opened her eyes. Although there were 24 hours in the Tsukuyomi world, in the real world, it was only 1 second. Oh, how does it taste? Dustless stopped and walked to Kamishiro Rise. He squatted down and asked jokingly, after eating so much human meat, are you hungry now? Yes, in the Tsukuyomi world, Dustless did not torture Kamishiro Rise, but only let her eat enough. Didn't Kamishiro Rise like human meat? Wuchen only fulfilled her wish to let this woman eat to her heart's content. The taste is very ecstatic. Dustless teased, the food in the Tsukuyomi world is free, do you want to continue eating? Anyway, I have always been a kind person, do you want to eat again? Don't. Hearing this, Kamishiro Rise suddenly showed a terrified expression. Obviously, she was afraid of being tortured. If she was a ghoul in the past, she would definitely like to eat human meat, but now it was a world of difference. She was transformed by Jana my hero into a half-human like Arima Kisho. In terms of diet, she was close to human. Now, continuing to eat human meat was simply a kind of painful torture for her. Even if she was a ghoul, eating human meat for 24 hours in a row would definitely make her nauseous. Dustless, Sama, come and save me. Just as Dustless was about to continue teasing Kamishiro Rise, a panicked cry for help suddenly rang out. Dustless looked back and saw that it was the old man, Jana Mingbo. However, his current state was not good. Instead, he was being captured by a group of mysterious people. Yo, Dustless's eyes narrowed as he looked at the group of people. He smiled and said, is this the best battle? Everyone, are you all planning to throw your lives away? Your deep feelings are truly touching. The people who came this time were Arima Kisho, the store manager Yoshimura Kozen, and some people from the clown organization. In addition, there were also Jukiyama Shi and others. Not only that, but there were also several hostages, Takatsuki Sen and Jana Mingbo. In addition, there were several other members of Aijairai Tree. They really took great pains to deal with Dustless. Are you trying to blackmail me? Dustless's eyes were slightly cold as he asked faintly, however, using your daughter as a hostage, I have a new view of you, Manager Fangsuan. Sorry, I'm incompetent. Takatsuki-san showed a bitter smile. She was seriously injured before, and she had not recovered yet. Then she was besieged by Arima Kisho and others. It was inevitable that she would be captured alive. Arima Kisho alone had pressure on her, not to mention that there were other people supporting her. It was normal for her to be captured. Some things are inevitable. Looking into Wu Chen's eyes, the store manager, Yoshimura Gakusan, said in a deep voice, to fulfill some people's wishes, some people are destined to be sacrificed. I can't sacrifice my friends and my employees for family. Is it? Sacrificing your daughter to fulfill others. You think you are great. Dustless glanced at the store manager with disgust. He did not look at the old guy Yoshimura Kozen. As the store manager Yoshimura Kozen said, sometimes sacrifices were inevitable, but it was still incomprehensible to give a reason to sacrifice his daughter. Dustless also guessed his intention. He probably expected Takatsuki-san to threaten him. Hey, they are all here. Is this lineup a total mobilization to die? However, Wuchen just glanced at Takatsuki-san gently, and then smiled ferociously. That's good, it saves me the trouble of looking for you stinky rats. Even if this garbage city sinks, it doesn't matter. Because CCG was also a ghoul, after the exposure, almost all the people in Tokyo ran away. Now there were only a few ghouls left. After all, ghouls needed to eat human flesh. If human beings disappeared, ghouls naturally could not survive. They were closely related to each other. Without human beings, ghouls could not continue to live. You bastard. Is there something wrong with your head? If this city disappears, what's the benefit of it to you? When they heard Dustless's crazy words, everyone showed a stunned expression. Regardless of whether what Dustless said was nonsense or not, although Tokyo had now become an empty city, there were still many ghouls. Dustless's crazy words seemed to want to drag the whole movement to die together, which really scared everyone. Whether Dustless could do it or not, everyone unanimously labeled Dustless as a crazy person. This guy was dangerous, even his thoughts were very dangerous. Kill him, this guy is a scourge. Arima Kisho held a black briefcase in both hands, and the glasses he wore condensed a lot of ice. Apparently, he also wanted to kill. Tokyo was still very balanced before, but it was broken by Dustless, who was a monster. The initiator of everything was him. Shrimp soldiers and crab generals said one day that they want to kill a healthy human being. Are you still sleeping? Dustless just shook his head when he heard the words. It was not that he looked down on this group of people, but Jiu Hantian was really overconfident. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2057. Go to hell. Jukiyama Shi's face was ferocious, and he was the first to lose his temper. At the same time, a dark blue cocoon broke out from his back, like a python wrapped around his arm, and the front end became a sharp sword. Jukiyama Shi was undoubtedly one of the people who hated Dustless the most. Dustless had not only trampled on his dignity, but also humiliated him unceremoniously, and even the food he wanted to taste the most, Kaneki Ken, was destroyed by this guy, and even the body was not left. Don't act rashly. Seeing that Jukiyama Shi was going to fight Dustless, Arima Kisho reached out and grabbed him. Let go of me. Jukiyama Shi's anger finally broke out, and he roared, this bastard killed my delicious food, and even the body was not left for me. Do I have a reason to let him go? Kaneki Ken had always been the most desirable food for Jukiyama Shi, and he was killed by Dustless. How could he bear it? Absolutely not. Stop. The boss of the antique coffee shop, Yoshimura Gakusan, looked at Jukiyama Shi fiercely, and released the majestic murderous aura that he had accumulated for many years. Jukiyama Shi, who was struggling violently, barely stopped. I know you have a reason to not let Dustless go, but I can't watch you die. Looking at Jukiyama Shi, who was almost angry, Yoshimura Gakusan comforted him, you can't beat Dustless alone. Jukiyama Shi was just an S-class ghoul, and Dustless? It was far beyond the SSS class. Idiot. Arima Kisho just looked at Jukiyama Shi coldly, and he couldn't help but hesitate. Cooperating with a group of shrimp soldiers and crab generals, can they really defeat the invincible Dustless? Forget it, I'm counting on that. Thinking about the plan that he had planned before, Arima Kisho looked at Dustless's eyes, and he once again recovered his calmness, and there was a little more confidence. Does this kid have a trump card? Wuchen looked at Arima Kisho with surprise. As for the others, they were almost ignored. Among these people, Arima Kisho was the strongest half-human. The others, to put it bluntly, were just clowns waving flags. Ding ding! Immediately, after Dustless's curious gaze, Arima Kisho took out his mobile phone and made a series of calls, and reported his location. My coordinates? Wuchen raised his eyebrows slightly. Although he was a little far away from Arima Kisho, he didn't know that Wuchen's hearing was surprisingly clear even though his hearing wasn't as good as his eye power. What Arima Kisho said was the location of the abandoned warehouse. Retreat. Arima Kisho suddenly ran away without saying anything. His behavior was extremely strange, and he ran faster than anyone else. After running for about 10 meters, Yoshimura Gyozen and the others came back to their senses. Remembering the previous plan, they also hurriedly ran away. In such a large space, only Dustless and the half-dead Kamishiro Rise were left. Do these guys need to be so afraid of death? Aren't you here to annihilate Dustless? Kamishiro Rise muttered to herself. She originally wanted to take advantage of the chaos to escape. Destroy me? Dustless glanced at Kamishiro Rise, and sneered, Are you blind? Those trash run faster than rabbits. You! Kamishiro Rise originally wanted to mock Dustless, but when she saw his terrifying face, she tactfully shut her mouth. After being taught a lesson by Dustless several times, she had completely lost her temper. Hurry up and get out of here. Glancing coldly at Kamishiro Rise, Dustless's tone was particularly harsh. As for helping Kamishiro Rise, don't joke, Dustless was sure that she would bite him. Boom! At this moment, the entire building suddenly shook violently. A large amount of dust fell off as the building swayed. Even the depths of the ground trembled slightly. Dustless frowned, and his observation haki spread out, taking in the situation within a few kilometers, and suddenly understood what happened. No wonder Arima Kisho called and reported my coordinates. It turned out to be this. Through the perception of his observation haki, Dustless found that in the blue void, countless flames fell from the sky, and the number was a large black area, and the location of the attack was the abandoned warehouse where Dustless was located. Boom! The violent explosion spread out, and even tens of meters below the ground were destroyed. This trick doesn't look like a ghoul. As a ghoul, Kamishiro Rise naturally understood the fighting methods of ghouls. They all belonged to the type of close combat, and they couldn't make this kind of earthquake, like the terrible movement of the end of the world. It's a missile. His eyes narrowed, and Dustless gave a shocking answer. This kind of hot weapon, when the number reaches a certain level, the power is also terrifying. Kamishiro Rise heard Dustless's explanation and did not refute it, but she agreed, let's get out of here, the power of the missile can easily destroy us. It's just destroying you. Dustless said without hesitation. Things like missiles had no effect on him at all. The elemental transformation of glint-glinting fruit was enough to ignore all physical attacks, and any attack was just useless. Of course, the large-scale attack of saturation was indeed enough to destroy Kamishiro Rise. Although ghouls were stronger than humans, they were not invincible. For example, in the original work, after ghouls were swept by bullets, they would still die. If it was replaced by some kind of unprecedented hot weapon, such as nuclear weapons, it was more than enough to destroy Kamishiro Rise. To Dustless's surprise, Arima Kisho was really a smiling tiger. He was afraid that Dustless would destroy the city, but now he used hot weapons to attack Dustless's location, which was shameless. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2058. Boom boom boom. The violent explosion shook the entire building, causing it to collapse. Damn bastards. Kaneshiro Rise gritted her teeth. She hated Arima Kisho and the others to the bone. Just like Dustless said, if she was attacked by a large number of firearms, she would definitely die. If she wanted to live, she could only. Thinking of this, Kaneshiro Rise subconsciously looked at Dustless, who acted as if nothing happened. If I want to live, I can only count on this guy. Kaneshiro Rise thought so and subconsciously approached Dustless. This woman is really opportunistic. Glancing at Kaneshiro Rise behind him, Dustless could even feel Kaneshiro Rise's breathing. It was rapid and nervous. Obviously, this woman didn't want to die yet. Of course, if they could live, who would want to die? It's good that you know your place. Dustless showed a rare imperceptible smile, and immediately a large number of materialized energy waves erupted from his body. Roar, roar, roar. A roar that seemed to have come from ancient times suddenly resounded through the clouds like thunder. The moment it resounded, the entire world trembled. Boom, boom, boom. The golden energy monster's body continued to grow, and in an instant, the warehouse exploded. Roar, roar. The tall and sturdy giant revealed his ferocious body, and a faint howl reverberated between heaven and earth. What kind of monster is this? Inside Kinsusunu, Kaneshiro Rise was stunned. To be fair, it was the first time she saw such an unprecedented monster. Inside the golden energy monster, Kaneshiro Rise felt particularly peaceful. Boom, boom, boom. A large number of firearms bombarded Kinsusunu, but there was no reaction at all. The huge body of Kinsusunu just trembled slightly, and a large amount of black smoke splashed out. Weak. Glancing at the black smoke on Kinsusunu, Dustless just smiled casually. Clang, clang, clang. Immediately afterward, Kinsusunu's katana of light came out of its scabbard, and it was filled with an invincible sharpness. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Looking at the various missiles in the sky, Dustless swept out his katana. Boom, boom, boom. The front part of the katana of light swept out a destructive sharpness, and with a destructive momentum, it shattered a large number of missiles in the east sky. Poochie. The power was so great that it was unprecedented. Even the indolent white cloud in the void was unlucky and was annihilated by the exaggerated power of Susunu. Golu. Everyone stared at the sky with their mouths agape. All of them were stunned. Boom, 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 boom. A raging wind blew, and black smoke filled the sky, engulfing the vast world. The pungent smell of gunpowder entered everyone's lungs through their noses and mouths. It's too strong, we're no match for it. Not to mention the others, even the most stubborn Arima Kisho, who demanded to kill Wuchen, felt powerless and fragile in his heart after staring at the super giant who stood tall and stepped on the ground, despising everything in the world. It's useless to regret. We have chosen God as our enemy. We must be ready to fight. The store manager, Yoshimura Gyozen, warned at the top of his voice. Looking at the majestic figure, his heart fell into the abyss, and it was too late for regrets. Kinsusunu's body almost covered the sky. Thinking about fighting such a monster, the store manager felt a chill in his heart. It was not that they were afraid of death. If they could take Dustless down with them, they would not hesitate. But in the face of Kinsusunu, this kind of move really belonged to the ultimate monster of the super dimension, and they had no means to deal with it. I'll go first. Seeing that everyone was hesitating, Jukiyama snorted disdainfully and stood up resolutely. Young man, you have courage. Dustless had a murderous smile at the corner of his mouth, and he gave a rare look of appreciation. Being willing to die so generously, it also showed that this kid gave everything for Kaneki Ken. This rare gay love was truly admirable. But then again, at this moment, the world was solemn. An indescribable pressure spread out, giving people the illusion that they had suddenly changed space and arrived at the legendary moon. The gravity had doubled, and it was difficult to move an inch. There was also a suffocating pressure, and breathing was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Retreat. Everyone vomited blood and found that the reason why they felt such great pressure was entirely because Kinsusunu's Tachi of Light was raised again. Damn it, that kind of move can be used infinitely. The hearts of Arima Kisho and others collapsed, and the panic and fear were difficult to hide. This guy was too terrifying. He could even use this kind of unprecedented move at will. Was there any chance of winning? Everyone thought that Dustless would go a little too far, but they did not expect that this guy's momentum was not reduced. It seemed that Kensusanu's control did not consume any extra strength at all. Although the target was Jukiyama-shi, everyone's heart was pressed by a mountain, as if what would be destroyed next was not a simple Jukiyama-shi, but the whole world, and they would inevitably perish. All creatures felt the sense of insignificance and death that they had never felt before. Even so, it can't stop me from avenging Kaneki. His resolute and decisive tone was not ambiguous at all, and it carried a trace of undisguised willingness to face death calmly. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2059. In order to eat human flesh, you are not afraid of death. You are a weirdo among weirdos. In Kensusanu, Dustless stared at the crazy Jukiyama-shi and couldn't help but shake his head. This idiot obviously took the initiative to die. He let him go once, but he didn't expect this kid to be so insensible. He was so fearless of death. He wanted to eat Kaneki Ken so much that he didn't even want to live. And a long time ago, Kaneki Ken was evaporated by Dustless. In that case, I will send you to hell. You can eat him again in hell. Glancing coldly at Jukiyama-shi, Kensusanu's several meters long sword fell from the sky. The ground changed dramatically in an instant. The terrain was rewritten in an instant. Boom boom boom. The momentum of the sword overflowed from Kensusanu's sword of light. The moment it fell, the whole earth was smashed by the overwhelming force. Puchi. The sword cut through Jukiyama-shi's body, as if it touched paper. It instantly tore him into pieces and crushed him into a bloody mist. Ka ka ka. Not to mention the corpse, Jukiyama-shi's body was easily cut open at the moment the sword touched him, and even the internal bones were crushed into a bloody mist. Puchi. 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 After crushing Jukiyama-shi, Kensusanu's sword continued to move forward, unscrupulously moving forward for several kilometers, turning the complete earth into a bottomless dark abyss. The fresh soil deep in the ground was exposed to the explosion. Arima Kisho and others saw this. They had goosebumps all over the ground. They looked at the golden energy giant in the sky with fear, and their faces twitched in panic. Everyone unanimously showed the intention of retreating and flinching. It was not that they were incompetent, but the enemy was too strong. Susanu stepped forward several times, and suddenly, the earth trembled and the mountains shook. Even people who were hundreds of meters away could feel the slight vibration, and when Susanu stepped forward, a large amount of sand and dust splashed out. Stop right there. Seeing that Kensusanu was getting closer and closer, and that giant foot was about to crush manager Yoshimura and the others, Arima Kisho anxiously stopped it. If they dare to come any closer, I'll kill them. Pointing at several cadres of Aojirai tree, Arima Kisho threatened with a cold face, Dustless, you don't want to see your subordinates killed by me, do you? If that's the case, then immediately. Boom boom boom. Who would have thought that before Arima Kisho could finish his words, Kensusanu's huge body moved again. It seemed that it would crush Arima Kisho and the others in just a few steps. Do you think I don't dare? Are you underestimating me? Arima Kisho was furious and immediately released Kuin-ku without hesitation. A strange weapon appeared in his hand, and the front end was pointed at several captured Aojirai tree cadres. Pa pa pa. Golden lightning suddenly flashed in front of Kuin-ku, and then the golden energy ball quickly rushed out. Boom boom boom. The bound Aojirai tree cadres were trampled by Arima Kisho, and their bodies were suddenly blasted into several halves, and their corpses dissipated like scattered flowers. Boom boom boom. However, Arima Kisho's actions were useless, and Kensusanu's huge body was still moving forward. You want to threaten me? Dustless Kensusanu's mouth swept a scornful and contemptuous smile, and his dull voice was like rolling thunder, and in the blink of an eye, it spread to every corner of the world. Even if all the humans in this world die, don't even think about threatening me. The deafening sound spread throughout the world, and then, Kinsusanu's giant foot lifted up, and aimed at the location of Arima Kisho and the others, and came over unceremoniously. Gulp. Everyone was stunned when they saw this, and their hearts were filled with despair. Run! Arima Kisho, who realized the danger, quickly warned loudly, and escaped the capture of the giant foot at the fastest speed in his life to avoid being trampled to death like a bug. Boom boom boom. Kinsusanu's big foot fell, and suddenly the ground shook, and there were more cracks on the ground. Oh, there are a few bugs that react quickly. Dustless lowered his head and looked down at the several figures in the dust below, and touched his chin. The strength of a few rats is average, but their speed of escape is first class. At the moment when it was trampled by Kinsusanu, several black shadows jumped out of it. Sure enough, it's them, they are really lucky. Dustless squinted his eyes and looked carefully, and the vague figures in the dust were suddenly clear. He found that the figures who escaped with wings were Arima Kisho, Yoshimura Kozen, Takatsuki-sen, and others. It's not time to die, but it's over. Blindly running away is just a reflection of weakness. Looking around, the strength of these three people was extremely powerful. Needless to say, Yoshimura Kozen was an SSS-class ghoul, the famous one-eyed owl. In addition, the strength of Arima Kisho was beyond doubt. More than 10 years ago, he severely injured the SSS-class ghoul at that time, Yoshimura Kozen. His strength was naturally good, although he was an SS-class ghoul, his real strength was far beyond this limit. As for Takatsuki-sen, she was just a simple captive, a burden that dragged them down. It's so dangerous. Arima Kisho, who escaped from the disaster, gasped with relief. Looking at the flattened ground, he shrugged his shoulders and subconsciously stepped back a few steps. As for others, they were simply trampled to death, and there were no bones left. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2060. It's almost done. Looking at the broken Tokyo, Dustless removed Kinsusanu with no expression. Kinsusanu took a few steps casually, and the ground shook. Especially the Kinsusanu released by Dustless was even more powerful. The surface within tens of kilometers was affected by the aftermath. It's over. After looking around, Dustless removed the mighty Kinsusanu, and his cold eyes were like a cold wind, sweeping over the few people who were struggling to survive. Surrender quickly, or I will kill him. Perceiving that Dustless landed, Ha grabbed Takatsuki-sen's neck in an instant, and the kagun on his back turned into a sharp sword, pointing at Takatsuki-sen's throat, which was enough to easily cut her throat and destroy her life in an instant. Ha ha ha. Naive, threatening me only proves that you have exhausted your abilities. Seeing this, Dustless just grinned, and immediately ignored Ha's warning, and walked slowly. Your warning demonstration is meaningless. If you want to die more comfortably, you can kill yourselves collectively. As Wuchen walked over slowly, he reminded leisurely, the person I value is in front of me. If you can really kill her, it means that you're strong enough to ascend to the heavens. You think I don't dare? Ba was infuriated by Dustless's words until smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. He said in a cold voice, quickly surrender. Don't challenge my bottom line. This kind of person is also a scourge in this world. Best to kill him. The store manager, Yoshimura Kozen, was unexpectedly silent. He didn't even look at Takatsuki-sen, but just stared at Dustless, and his face was gloomy from time to time. The clerk of the antique coffee shop died tragically. What was left in Yoshimura Kozen's heart was simply revenge. It's not that you don't dare. Dustless shook his head, staring at the kagun's sword that had been close to Takatsuki-sen, and explained softly, your speed is too slow. In the short moment when you are about to kill her, you will die before Takatsuki Sr., Dustless said lazily and casually, looking straight at Ha. His tone contained great confidence and calmness. You forced me to do this. Hearing the words, Ha was furious, and the dense cocoon on his back all shot to Takatsuki-sen's neck. Anyway, according to the previous plan, Takatsuki-sen will definitely die. Arima Kisho also agreed with this approach. After all, it was a powerful ghoul of the SSS class, and it was extremely dangerous. Shoo! Takatsuki-sen closed her eyes. In a trance, she had already seen the miserable death of her body separated from her head. Boom! It was also at this moment that a deafening commotion broke through the horizon. The entire world seemed to be in a golden river, sparkling with starlight. It's dazzling. Even if her eyes were closed, Takatsuki-sen could feel the warmth of the sharp edge. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2061. Gulu Gulu. Blood flowed quickly from Batsu's chest, the speed was fast, like a rapid stream. It seemed that all the blood in Batsu's body would flow out. Batsu clenched his teeth, his distorted face looked like he was in pain. However, this guy deserved to be a ghoul whose strength surpassed the SS class. He just closed his mouth and didn't speak. He looked quite tough. His sharp eyes stared at Dustless. He couldn't wait to peel off his skin and pull out his bones. Really fragile. Reaction. Really slow. Dustless's contemptuous tone, like a thorn, deeply hurt Batsu's self-esteem. His painful face suddenly became ferocious. Everyone had self-esteem. Ouch! Hysterical screams came out from his mouth full of blood. Batsu's eyes were scarlet, jumping with unknown murderous intent. His eyes bulged, which was particularly terrifying. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At the same time, a large number of Kagun on his back once again swept over. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Not only Batsu launched an attack, but even Arima Kisho also launched an attack. He released Kunk, and the weird weapon shot a large number of golden lightning energy balls. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Not only these two people, even the store manager Yoshimura Gakusen also shook the Kagun behind his back. Suddenly countless needle-like bone darts were shot out. It was similar to the feathers of birds, but the strange thing was that it was harder and sharper than the steel sword. Hee. Seeing this, Takatsuki-san laughed, but her haggard face was slightly miserable and lonely, and her laughter was also miserable. If one day, his biological father pointed his sword at him, no matter who it was, he would definitely be hit hard. Dustless naturally would not wait for death. A dangerous halo jumped in his eyes, and violent energy fluctuations burst out. With Dustless and Takatsuki-san as the center, a perfect defense circle was formed, isolating all attacks. Shinra Tensei. Dustless roared, and a transparent air cover suddenly appeared around his body. Bang bang bang. The incoming attacks collapsed one after another. Attacked by the repulsive force, all of them were shattered. Moreover, because Bailey was too close to Dustless, he suffered a fatal blow in an instant. Poochie. He was already severely injured to begin with. Now that he was struck by the repulsive force, he spurted out a mouthful of blood. Then, he was sent flying, lying on the ground half dead. Swish. Swish. The dangerous sound of breaking through the air galloped over. Dustless turned his head and saw that it was a dense ball of thunder and lightning. Arima Kisho? Dustless smiled knowingly as he stared at the bespectacled white-haired man. Immediately, his eyes looked directly at the golden energy ball that was attacking him. With a flick of his finger, an even more terrifying light beam whizzed out. Dow Breaker 88, Flying Dragon strikes the thief. Boom boom boom. A sharp roar resounded through the sky. The blue sky was covered by the thick beam of energy. It majestically pounced towards the energy ball that had a great momentum but was actually as small as a raindrop. It turned out to be the blue sky. Because Dustless's move was too exaggerated, the sky also turned into the same beautiful color as the 88th Tao breaker. Everyone held their breath. Seeing that the two were about to collide violently, everyone widened their eyes. It should be able to offset it, right? Looking at the thick laser beam that covered the sky, Arima Kisho lowered his head and guessed. His hands that were holding Kuan-ku's hands were already sweaty. However, ideals were often beautiful, but reality was extremely cruel. There was no so-called offset. What was even more shocking was that the situation turned out to be one-sided. Puchi. Arima Kisho shot a large number of golden lightning balls through Kuan-ku. Like a piece of ragged clothes that hadn't been worn for many years, the 88th Tao breaker easily shattered and scattered with the wind like goose feathers. Boom! Under the attack of the 88th Tao breaker, the void trembled, and the scattered lightning balls finally disappeared. They burst open like fragile water droplets, turned into starlight all over the sky, and quietly left the field. So fragile? Arima Kisho was stunned. He suddenly felt that his brain wasn't enough. What was the beginning? He was so fragile, and his move was easily defeated. That's how fragile you are. Otherwise, do you think you're so strong? Dustless smiled and didn't say anything. He stared at the stunned Arima Kisho. This guy thinks too highly of himself. Does he really think he's invincible? Of course, in terms of the power system of this world, Arima Kisho was indeed a predator standing at the top of the food chain. But this time, it was a pity that he chose the wrong enemy. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The energy beam that covered the sky continued to move forward unscrupulously, distorting the sky and tearing the vast earth apart. Boom boom boom. It wasn't until several mountains a few hundred meters away were smashed into pieces that they finally stopped. So strong. Everyone stared at the distant sky, dumbfounded. Even though they were a few hundred meters away, the terrifying explosion caused by the energy beam blasting the mountains could be clearly felt. Under such an unprecedented attack, the word escape had completely lost its meaning. At this moment, Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gyozen could feel the violent vibration even though they were a few hundred meters away. The shock wave of the explosion even pushed their bodies back constantly. I'm not his opponent. Realizing the difference in strength, Arima Kisho smiled bitterly. If this continues, it's better to surrender as soon as possible. Anyway, it's just asking for humiliation. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2062. It's not that Arima Kisho and others are idiots, but the enemy is too powerful. Invulnerable strength, enough to be immune to all physical attacks. In the face of such an enemy, anyone will have a headache. The odds of winning are pitiful. After a little estimation of the odds of winning between the enemy and himself, Arima Kisho helplessly found that once they fight, the odds of winning on their side seems to be zero. That is to say, no matter how they fight, even if Dustless stands and lets them attack, the final victory or defeat belongs to Dustless. After all, the ability of elementalization is too powerful. Even if Dustless stands still, it is enough to exhaust Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Kozen. Scared? Just now, the appearance of the two of you having victory in your grasp, I'll never forget it for the rest of my life, Dustless mocked eccentrically. Ta. Dustless stepped forward lazily, approaching an inch closer. Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Kozen would retreat a few meters away, so that they have a sense of security. When facing Dustless, the two of them did not have the slightest bit of courage. They only retreated instinctively, almost developing a panic attack. It's not a good idea to keep retreating. The pace suddenly stopped. Yoshimura Kozen's face was full of anger, and his red eyes were also dotted with endless coldness. Shio. His back trembled slightly, and a large number of hard objects similar to needles whistled out, shooting out like raindrops. Let's start with you. The eagle's eyes stared at the store owner, Yoshimura Kozen. Dustless stared intently, his deep black eyes were as terrible as the abyss, flowing with cold hostility. As for the sharp objects that were shot head-on, Dustless didn't even look at them, as if they didn't exist, and continued to move forward. Poochie. 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 Without the slightest escape, Dustless's body was penetrated one by one, his head, abdomen, 2 pairs of legs, 2 arms, and 2 eyes were penetrated by the sharp objects. If it was an ordinary person, naturally, he would be dead. But Dustless, God is really unfair, why is there such a monster alive? What kind of stupid things did we ghouls do to make people angry? Seeing Dustless showing this ability again, the wounds recovered in an instant, Yoshimura Kozen couldn't help but complain. This monster-like existence really violated the law of biological evolution. To some extent, he has broken away from the category of human beings and become a creature in another field. Arima Kisho's tone was full of resentment, and it gave people the feeling that he was complaining. There is no way, any creature has its fragile side. After several setbacks, even a strong person's character will change. Shio shio shio. Wu Chen's body was like air. Even if they could hit him, they couldn't hurt him. He continued to walk over slowly with a calm expression. I can't beat him. Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gakusen both felt powerless. The two looked at each other and wanted to retreat. As long as there is life, there is no need to worry about firewood. Such a shallow truth is known by the world, not to mention Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gongsun. If he knew that he was going to die for sure, yet he still courted death without fear of death, wasn't this an idiotic behavior? Retreat. With a sudden shout, Arima Kisho's body turned into a burst of light and disappeared. Kozen Yoshimura was stunned for a moment. After noticing that Arima Kisho had disappeared, his mouth twitched and he quickly slipped away. Bastard, don't run. Seeing such a scene, Ba was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. His body had been shattered by Dustless. He wanted to run, but he was powerless. Dao Breaker 90, Black Coffin. A cold voice suddenly descended. The half-dead Ba felt his entire body turn cold, as if he had been targeted by some kind of natural disaster. He subconsciously raised his head to look at the horizon. Bastard, I will not forgive you even if I become a ghost. Seeing countless black cold lights falling from the depths of the void, after yelling, Ba's body was instantly fragmented. Poochie. 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 The invisible black blade had no substance, but it was real. It was impossible to guard against it. It easily penetrated Ba's body and dismembered him like minced meat. How powerful is the recovery ability of ghouls? It's like this, you can't recover. Glancing at the dead Ba lightly, Dustless looked straight into the distance. Even if Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gongsun had escaped, under the perception of observation haki, Dustless still clearly felt their movements. Phew. Photons filled the sky, and a violent sound of breaking through the air fell. Following that, Dustless also disappeared without a trace. In front of the light, hundreds of thousands of miles were just a short distance. I finally escaped from that devil boy. Hiding under the dark ruins, Yoshimura Gongsun breathed heavily, turned his head and glanced behind him. After noticing that there was no movement, he was relieved. Hurry up. Without much rest, Yoshimura Gongsun chose to continue running. There was no other reason, Dustless was too dangerous. However, at this time, a sudden change occurred. Phew. Yoshimura Kozen raised his head and saw a ray of deadly golden light sweeping toward him. It was extremely tricky and aimed at his neck. Kakaka. His right foot suddenly stepped on the ground, the surface suddenly collapsed, and Yoshimura Gongsun decisively retreated. Too slow. The indifferent tone was like a machine, without emotion, the deadly dangerous light, the speed was faster and more ferocious. Poochie. In the end, Yoshimura Gongsun was still hit by the big move. The arc of hot-cold light tore his chest, and blood flowed. Light speed kick. Looking at the opportunity, Dustless jumped up with his right foot and hit Yoshimura Gongsun's face with all his strength. The powerful force directly shattered the one-eyed mask on his face. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus chapters, 3,000 rewards plus chapters, 1,000 evaluation votes plus chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus chapters. Chapter 2063. Ka ka ka. Receiving a fatal and ruthless blow, the one-eyed mask on Yoshimura's face suddenly collapsed, revealing his true face. His haggard cheeks were particularly hesitant and full of confusion about the future. Although Yoshimura always warned himself to be strong, he was also frightened by Dustless's strength. The gap between the two sides was too big. Boom boom boom. The light exploded, and the hot storm covered his whole body. Yoshimura's whole body was swallowed and occupied by the fire, and the high temperature burned everything. It's so hot. In the huge fire, Yoshimura's painful scream could be heard, and only people with good eyesight could see it. Because the power of the light speed kick was too fierce, the kagun on Yoshimura's back was quickly burned out. He was originally in the state of kakuja, and his whole body was surrounded by kagun, but the temperature of the light speed kick was too high, and Yoshimura in the flame could not withstand the high temperature and was quickly melted. Phew phew phew. At the same time, there was a sharp sound from his back again. You dare to come back? Turning his head, Dustless found that the person who came into his sight was Arima Kisho, who was holding conch in his hand. Boom boom boom. The energy ball, which was the size of a human head, crackled and rattled. Its power was extraordinary, and it was accompanied by a scorching light. Its meaning was similar to the light speed kick. Not only was its power astonishing, but it was also accompanied by an extremely high temperature. Didn't I say before that I am a flash person who ate the glint fruit? All physical attacks don't work on me. Wu Chen shook his head slightly and looked straight at the incoming energy ball. He stood still and didn't even try to hide. He just stood there quietly. Boom boom boom. In the end, several dangerous golden energy balls all blasted on Dustless's body, annihilating him in the flame. Boom boom boom. A violent explosion swept from Dustless's body, and his body was suddenly blown apart, scattered, but there was no bleeding. Good opportunity. His eyes narrowed slightly, and Arima Kisho rushed quickly. Phew phew phew. Arima Kisho's body was like a stream of light, rushing over at a high speed, crossing layers of space and maximizing the speed of his life. However, the strange thing was that Arima Kisho thought that he would take the opportunity to attack Dustless. After all, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It would be unreasonable if he didn't attack. But the strange thing was that Arima Kisho didn't hesitate at all when he walked past him. And the target was Yoshimura Kozai, who was tormented by the flames. Leave now. Holding Yoshimura Gyozan's body, Arima Kisho retreated at full speed. His original intention was to save Yoshimura Gyozan. After all, this old guy's combat power was extraordinary. If he died, it would be a pity. Arima Kisho would not be able to support himself. I understand. Yoshimura Gakusen glanced at Arima Kisho and immediately left with his help. You two are leaving just like that? At this moment, a chilling sound suddenly came from behind. It was like a cold wind. Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gakusen both shuddered. At least leave something behind. Dustless narrowed his eyes and focused on Yoshimura Gakusen's body, for example, the things inside the body. Run. Hearing this, Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gakusen both sped up to leave. The wind under their feet was like a gust of wind, disappearing into the sky. Stupid. You exposed your back to the enemy. If I don't kill you, even God will not forgive me. Dustless shook his head and sighed, calmly raising his right arm. Kakaka. The golden energy ball condensed in an instant, and the straightened thumb swallowed the photons in the vacuum. Laser. The straight laser finally shot out. It was obviously hundreds of meters away from Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gakusen, but the light was still so fast that it approached the two in an instant. Puchi. The terrifying edge penetrated Yoshimura Gakusen's body, leaving a fist-sized mark in his heart, and his body was instantly penetrated. Since he was an enemy, Dustless naturally would not be merciful. This old man was very stubborn. He was delusional to think that ghouls and humans could coexist. It was incredible. If ghouls wanted to live, they must eat human flesh, and humans naturally did not want to be eaten, even the corpse was no exception. Therefore, the two sides were destined to be unable to reconcile. Put on. His heart was destroyed. Yoshimura Gakusen naturally entered the end of his life. The strength of his body was lost in an instant. He even did not pay attention and fell to the ground. Is this the end? Yoshimura Gakusen, who was lying on the ground, looked at the sky in confusion. In his eyes, there was regret. If he could stand on Dustless's side at the beginning, he would not fall into such a miserable situation. Everything was entirely his own fault, and he could not blame others. This is bad. Glancing at the wound on the store manager's chest, Arima Kisho suddenly knew that the old man was finished. It was impossible to save him, and he would definitely die. His heart was destroyed, and even his internal organs were erased. It was impossible to save him. You go. His turbid eyes glanced at Arima Kisho, and Yoshimura Gakusen said in a deep voice, I have already come here, I can stay here to delay time for you. Whoosh. Who would have thought that when these words just fell, a dazzling light fell from the sky? Puchi. The golden light cover on Yoshimura Gakusen's body seemed to carry thousands of gravity, and his body was crushed in an instant. It's funny, an old man wants to delay me. In the light beam that fell before, there was a disdainful tone, and then Dustless, who looked as usual, came out and stared at Arima Kisho intently. At this point, you're the only one left. Go to the underworld and accompany them. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2064. It seems that I have to end it here today. Staring at Dustless's calm cheeks, Arima Kisho smiled sadly. I have been a ghoul investigator for so many years, but I didn't expect to end up so ridiculous, being chased like a stray dog. There's something wrong with what you're saying. Hearing this, Dustless just shook his head and said calmly, It's not that I want to chase you, but you blocked my way. Really? Arima Kisho murmured and immediately raised the strange ku again. Phew. The golden light swept at the front, followed by the high-density thunder ball roaring out. Boom! The powerful energy ball blasted onto Dustless's body, blasting his body into smithereens. The photons that spurted out piled up all over the sky. Is it like this again? Arima Kisho smiled bitterly, his hand loosened, Kunk in his right arm almost fell, and his mood was frustrated and sad. Buzz! There was an inexplicable energy ripple in the void, and the photons that burst open immediately gathered again, gradually turning into a human's mentality. Arima Kisho, you should kill yourself. Glancing at Arima Kisho faintly, Dustless's body used elementalization to recover quickly. The gap between us is really different. You don't want me to do it. That's right. Hearing this, Arima Kisho didn't comment, looked at Dustless, and finally nodded. As Dustless said, in any case, Arima Kisho can't defeat Dustless, and he can't even hit the real body. Is it necessary to continue? Even if Dustless doesn't move his body, Arima Kisho will die sooner or later. If you commit suicide, you can still keep your body intact. Pointing to the body of Yoshimura Gyozen, Dustless, kindly, persuaded, see, you don't know what's good for you. Looking at the place where Dustless's finger pointed, Yoshimura Gyozen's body had collapsed and turned into a large pool of blood and debris about the size of sand. There was no bones left. Farewell. Immediately, under Dustless's indifferent gaze, Arima Kisho picked up Kuan-ku in his hand again, but this time he didn't take the initiative to attack Dustless, but aimed at his own neck. At least you know your place. Upon seeing this scene, Dustless finally heaved a sigh of relief. His eyes involuntarily drooped as he thought in his heart, we have wasted enough time. It is almost time. However, at this moment, Dustless's contemplation came to an abrupt end. He suddenly discovered that a tall shadow had covered him, revealing an endless gloomy and cold aura in front of him. This is, out of curiosity, Dustless looked up and his pupils suddenly froze. Die. Arima Kisho was as silent as a ghost. He approached Dustless quietly, and the big sword that he held tightly whistled down. This is, looking at the falling Kuan-ku dumbfounded, Dustless noticed the extraordinariness and was really surprised. He wasn't surprised by Arima Kisho's strength. No matter what kind of Kuan-ku was, it was garbage and slag to Dustless. What was surprising was that Dustless smelled something unusual from this Kuan-ku. It seems to be the same Kagun as the Yoshimura store manager, and the smell is somewhat similar. Slightly sniffing, a unique bloody smell suddenly entered his nostrils, and it was somewhat similar to the smell of the Yoshimura store manager before. Could it be, thinking back, Dustless suddenly thought of something, but it was too late. Puchi. The blood-red katana fell from the sky, cutting half of Dustless's body and directly cutting him in half. At the moment of death, Dustless's eyes were wide open, full of disbelief, as if he was unwilling to die. You are too careless. The indifferent tone with a bit of ridicule suddenly sounded. Arima Kisho's mouth squirmed, and he said to himself, 10 years ago, I participated in the war of encirclement and suppression of Owl, tore off his arms, and made him into an SSS-class Kuan-ku Owl. Speaking of this, Arima Kisho's calm tone had a hint of pride. At the age of 19, Arima Kisho was already a second-class search. He fought with the SSS-class Owl, Yoshimura Gakusen. He cut off the arms of Owl and successfully defeated Owl. This battle became one of his heroic deeds and let him rise 2 levels in a row. You can die under its edge, you can close your eyes in the netherworld. Glancing at the blood-red katana in his hand, Arima Kisho sighed in a low voice, and then turned away without looking at Dustless. Phew. At the moment of turning around, a cold wind suddenly came from behind. Looking up at the sky, the vast sky was covered with a layer of dark clouds. Strange, Arima Kisho murmured and muttered in his heart, it was fine just now. Why did the wind suddenly blow? Out of curiosity, Arima Kisho looked back. His eyes instantly solidified, and he was full of rare panic and helplessness. So fast. Even if Arima Kisho had realized the danger and retreated at the first time, it was still too late. The golden katana had crushed his body. Puchi. Just like the scene just now, Arima Kisho's body was split into 2 halves and separated from his eyes. How is this possible? The short 5 words were the last sentence of Arima Kisho in the world. He was full of doubts until he died. Who killed him? Hi. A lazy voice suddenly sounded, following the source. It was Dustless who was safe and sound. I really don't understand why you idiots are so proud. Shaking his head, he glanced at Arima Kisho's body with pity. The Dustless that this guy killed was just transformed by genjutsu. Farewell, it's time to leave this world. Gently glancing at Arima Kisho's body, Dustless's body disappeared under the blue sky. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.